Chapter 308, Just Not Done Playing Yet. Humph, in your heart, I'm not as important as your mother. Isn't that obvious? William rolled his eyes at Ambrose's stubbornness. Don't tell me you think I'm more important than your parents right now. Ambrose opened her mouth to argue, then closed it. She didn't have William's blunt confidence to say outright that he outranked her family in her affections. Not speaking made her worry he was testing her, and her eyes pricked with tears. She was on the verge of crying. All right, William said, wrapping his arms around her and teasing. It's normal you're not as important as your parents. If you told me I mattered more than they do, I'd be annoyed. I might even have to give you a lesson on behalf of them. Parents come first. Boyfriends, even husbands, don't outrank them. I don't like girls who aren't filial. You jerk. Who said I'm unfilial? I just think you're as important as my parents. Ambrose batted his shoulder a few times, annoyed but smiling. As important as your parents? William's face lit up. Darling, that's an honor. I didn't expect to hold such a place in your heart. Of course you're my lover, so you're important, Ambrose murmured into his ear. The truth, though, sat quietly in her chest. William probably did mean more to her than her parents. She'd been in modeling since she was 13, left Brazil at 15, and now, at 19 and a half, had spent more than 4 years abroad. She'd only made the trip home twice for Christmas, when work allowed, and hadn't returned at all since. Given that, it wasn't surprising William had crept ahead of her parents in her day-to-day life. Still, they were her parents, and that mattered. So when William apologetically promised he would take her back to Brazil to see them when he had the time, Ambrose was ecstatic. She hugged him, hardly believing it. Really? You'd go back to Brazil with me to visit my parents? Why would I lie? William laughed. Even if I have no plans to marry, there's nothing wrong with visiting your parents. You're my girlfriend. Jerk. Ambrose wanted to punch him, half in mock anger, half because for a moment she'd suspected a deeper motive. Why else would he offer to meet her family? Sorry, darling. Maybe after 10 or 20 years together, if I ever want children, I might consider marriage for their sake. But not now. I've seen couples who loved each other to death and then divorced after a few years. I've lost faith in marriage, and marrying into an English noble family isn't appealing. When an English noble marries, the woman's property no longer belongs solely to her, but to the whole family. If the husband won't agree to a divorce, she might not get a penny. Ambrose rolled her eyes. You scoundrel. If you don't want to marry, fine. Don't marry. But don't dress it up with excuses. Don't think I can't see through you. After I met you, I did my homework about nobles. You're not one of those near-bankrupt aristocrats who need rich heiresses. What you're really saying is you're not done playing. You want to enjoy yourself for a few more years while you're young, right? William was stunned that she'd seen through him so easily. He'd thought they understood each other, but she'd said aloud what he hadn't even admitted to himself. He didn't know how to respond. I knew you weren't honest, Ambrose said softly. Don't worry, our future won't be built on lies. I won't meddle in your affairs. Even if I wanted to, I couldn't. Just don't let me read any scandals about you in the papers. She hung around his neck coquettishly. I'm so understanding and well-behaved. Am I officially your girlfriend now? People say I am, but it only counts if you say it. Why wouldn't you be? William asked. Where else would he find someone so clever and reasonable? In a few days, I'll take you shopping, Fifth Avenue or the Champs-Élysées. The papers will have pictures of both of us. You always bribe me with money, Ambrose said, rolling her eyes. Then can I come to your mother's birthday party? He made a face. You're asking for trouble. I don't want to ruin Lena's party. If she's unhappy, you'll have a hard time later. If she doesn't let me come to New York, you'll be in trouble. Ha! If she doesn't let you come, will you really stay away? Ambrose's tone had a challenge in it, and she dared him with a look. Are you crazy or drunk enough to tease me? William's expression hardened for a split second, and Ambrose softened immediately. Don't always try to appease me with money, so it looks like I'm only with you for it. He lifted her chin. Little one, if I didn't have money, you wouldn't have given me the time of day back in Nassau. You certainly wouldn't have given yourself to me after 2 days. Be honest. She wasn't offended. She understood the truth. Their relationship had started with mutual self-interest. That was then. Don't all women look at a man's appearance, then his wealth? Your conditions are excellent. I'd be a fool not to seize the chance. You're clever. Talk too much, and I'll spank you next time, he teased. Get lost. You always bully me. Ambrose's face broke into a smile when she saw he wasn't actually angry. She shook his arm playfully. Whatever, I'm yours. If you break me, you'll be the one to hurt. A prick of irritation hit William, but he checked it. He didn't want to make a scene. Just then, Hunter walked over with William's phone and handed it back. Mr. Devonshire, sorry to keep you waiting. Mr. Anthony and I have discussed the initial preparations. Tomorrow my assistant will fly to London to inspect the venue at Oxford Devonshire Castle. You'll need to inform Lady Devonshire. I'll call my mother first thing in the morning, William said. He'd planned to surprise Lena, but he realized keeping it secret would only make her anxious as the birthday approached. A single surprise was fine. 10 days of worry wasn't. He could find other ways to create a moment. There was no need to make his mother fret for half a month. Seeing the planners wrapping up, Ambrose, worried about her own dinner party, plucked at his sleeve. Although she wasn't as important as his mother, William knew he had to be considerate. He squeezed her hand and looked to Hunter. Ambrose's dinner party won't be affected, right? Of course not, Hunter replied. The birthday schedule is tight only for selecting ingredients and tableware. The rest isn't critical. We can spare a day or two to prepare Miss Ambrose's dinner. That's a relief. Otherwise, I'd have to sleep on the sofa tonight, William said, teasing. I wouldn't let you, Ambrose snapped, half annoyed, half amused. Everyone laughed, impressed that a young super-rich man like William could be so relaxed and playful in private. To those who knew him better, however, his charm was never accidental. He was simply never one to be easily approached, and his easy manner was a carefully maintained part of who he was. Chapter 309, A Few Words Worth $6 Million. William was determined to stay on the yacht until the North Polar Bear Gang business was finished. He had deliberately avoided a gag order. Letting word of his rendezvous with his girlfriend get out would protect him. If it wasn't officially connected to him, those with ulterior motives couldn't reach him. He'd also promised to spend a few million to pre-order that diamond-studded underdress for the fashion show, an investment to make sure Victoria's Secret wouldn't give up on Ambrosio. In the scheme of things, a few million was peanuts compared with the returns he expected. He hadn't anticipated, though, that the dress might cost $15 million. He wondered what expression that would draw from him. After they finished discussing the immediate matters, the yacht had drifted back to the New York Yacht Club. Hunter, perceptive as ever, excused himself and left as soon as the meeting wrapped. William waved to the Riva sales manager waiting at the slip. Mr. Devlin, I'm Robert Greaves, sales general manager of Riva. The Italian's English was halting, his bald head and thin frame making him look more nervous than handsome. I don't like beating around the bush, William said, frowning as he studied him. Tell me the real price of this yacht. Greaves went visibly paler. If the sale fell through, the overdue loans would come due, and as sales manager, he'd be the first to go. 20 years in the business had taught him to pull himself together. After a few seconds, he forced a steady smile. Mr. Devlin, this yacht is the largest and most technologically advanced vessel our company has built without private funding. Riva spent $16.4 million on construction alone. Add design fees and other costs, and our price is already at $18 million. If the global market hadn't crashed before she left the yard, she would have been a great success. William cut him off, but it's a prototype. Prototypes mean high cost, high risk, and uncertain returns. I'm the buyer. Your gamble isn't my obligation. $15 million is my top offer. If you accept, I'll sign now. If not, I'll order from Princess Yachts in England. This boat is only 49 meters. Too small, really. Good only for my girlfriend. And your so-called technology doesn't impress me. He launched into a torrent of criticisms, enumerating everything that irritated him. No defense system, no emergency escape submersible, no smart butler, no anti-eavesdropping measures, no global navigation redundancy, no hidden sea fishing platform, no 360-degree immersive cinema sound system. This cinema setup is just a cinema copy-paste. The living room LCD is thicker than my palm and not even flush-mounted. Do we need this many cabins? With this space, you should build a bigger bathroom. The furniture is wrong for a yacht. This is not a villa. You don't understand minimalism. And the helm's drive system is... He went on with relish. Greaves fumbled for a pen and a small notebook and began to write everything down, eyes wide. Want to hear more? William asked, smiling. Of course, Mr. Devlin, Greaves said eagerly. Please. William knew why Greaves was so interested. Those were the same insights yacht makers had slowly learned from customers over the years. He closed his notebook with a crisp, decisive tone. What I just told you is worth $6 million. The rest of what I'd say we can discuss after you sell me the yacht for $12 million. Otherwise, if you use any of these ideas in future models, I will sue your company for a decade. Even if I can't win, I'll drag the case on until everyone in your firm is exhausted. You may be powerful in Italy, but my legal team will teach you how hard it is to cross a billionaire. I need to consult with the company, Greaves stammered. He could imagine the nightmare, a drawn-out lawsuit that would block sales in England and the United States, especially with Martin, manager of the New York Yacht Club, as a witness. Considering William's wealth, Martin wouldn't dare lie. 15 minutes, William said. You have 15 minutes to call headquarters. If you go over that, I place an order with Princess. I'll also start patent filings for the things I mentioned. Anything you can't patent, I'll think about giving to your competitors for free. No one uses me. Martin, under William's stare, hurriedly recovered and bowed. Of course, Mr. Devlin. No one would cross a billionaire. I have a wife and 2 children to support. Good, Martin. Smart man. I like you. William wrote out a check for $1,000 and handed Martin a slip with the phone number of his private lawyer, Anthony. Get Ambrosio a membership card for your club. She's likely to use this yacht more than I will. And give Mr. Greaves this number. Tell him it's my lawyer. If he has any issues, he can call. I don't want to deal with that Italian-Sicilian man again. Martin stared at the string of zeros and blinked, then nodded. No problem, sir. He turned to Ambrosio. Congratulations, Miss Ambrosio. Mr. Devlin is the most generous gentleman I have ever met. She smiled and kissed William. Thank you. I love you, darling. Martin cleared his throat politely. Mr. Devlin, I wish you and Miss Ambrosio a pleasant time. William waved him off. Martin bowed and stepped onto the dock to wait for Greaves. 10 minutes later, Greaves bounded up the gangway, breathless and excited, only to be stopped by Martin, who handed him the slip with Anthony's number. You'll talk to the lawyer about the yacht purchase, Martin said. Greaves held the paper and stared. That's it? A $12 million contract, just like that? You give me a phone number and it's done? Martin rolled his eyes. He drew Greaves a little to one side. As a friend, there's something I should tell you. Greaves fell silent for a moment, then sighed. Martin, we've known each other for 6 years. I probably know what you mean. I know how I looked today, like an idiot. Martin smiled wryly. Call him. Do what he says. Close the deal. Greaves took a deep breath, folded the slip into his jacket, and straightened his shoulders. He picked up his phone and headed toward the dock to make the call. But for some reason, seeing William Devonshire terrifies me. I tremble all over. Chapter 310. The fear is real, and so are the ulterior motives. Huh? Terrified. Martin looked at Griff in surprise. Is that why you were off your game today? Griff nodded. It's not rational, Martin, but when I see William Devonshire, something in me just freezes. What is there about him that scares you? He's not a Sicilian mobster from your hometown, Martin said. Come on. You don't get it, Griff replied. It's a fear in my soul. Compared to William Devonshire, Sicilian and New York mobsters are like cane corsos, ferocious in appearance, but inside they're just thugs, criminals. At least they're still human. An ordinary person with a knife or a gun can still take them down. Standing in front of William Devonshire is different. It feels like facing a devil crawling out of hell, a demon wrapped in wailing, crying spirits, reeking of blood. Even though he's always smiling, when he looks at you, his eyes are like he's looking at data, completely emotionless. If he hadn't shown even a hint of warmth when he looked at Miss Ambrosio, I swear I might have peed my pants from fear. Christ, Griff. Martin swore under his breath and grabbed his collar in irritation. Are you on something? Or are you trying to make a fool of me? I thought you just thought Devonshire was dangerous. Now you're telling me he's some kind of demon? Do you expect me to believe that? It's a metaphor, you imbecile. Don't you understand metaphors? Griff shot back. And I swear I'm not making this up. Other than tricking you into paying a few times over the years, when have I ever lied to you about anything important? William Devonshire really does smell of blood. He lowered his voice when Martin covered his mouth. Shh, don't shout. Don't let Mr. Devonshire hear you. Martin glanced toward the super yacht a few dozen meters away, then dragged Griff back into his office. He shoved him away and cursed. You idiot Sicilian, even if Devonshire is some ruthless supervillain, what does that have to do with us? You're not a cop. You're a salesman. You'll get fired if you don't hit your quota. He stared at Griff with a new expression. After all these years, I didn't know you had a conscience. Don't call me a saint, Griff snapped, rubbing his forehead. I don't care what you want from William Devonshire. Just don't mess with my commission. Martin threw up his hands excitedly. Do you know how much I stand to make if this deal goes through? $120,000. That's 10 months' salary for me. The membership fee is almost irrelevant. If I can keep Miss Ambrosio happy and she goes out once a month, that $1 million will evaporate on fuel and maintenance inside half a year. My commission will be even higher. Griff watched him with a tired smile. You bastard, don't screw with me making money to pay my mortgage, or we'll stop being friends. Griff wanted to explain, but Martin's mind was already on mortgages and money. After a moment of struggling internally, Griff forced his professional smile back on. All right, whether Devonshire has blood on his hands or not really doesn't concern us. He took out his phone and dialed the number scribbled on a slip of paper. The call connected quickly. After a brief exchange, Griff and Anthony reached an agreement. He hung up and told Martin, "It's done. They want me to go to London to sign the contract. Anthony has William Devonshire's electronic authorization. He can sign on Devonshire's behalf." That's more like it, Martin said, relieved, and clapped Griff on the shoulder. The personal stuff about big shots is none of our business. Sorry I snapped at you. Last year I took out a loan to buy a Long Island villa for my kids. Less than half a year later, property values dropped by half and the mortgage didn't budge. The industry's in a slump. From April until now, 5 months, our yacht club hasn't added a single yacht. No commission. My $120,000 salary a month doesn't even cover the mortgage and household expenses. Griff inwardly celebrated. He put on a sympathetic face and nodded. Same at Lafarge. Ever since we acquired Riva, we haven't sold a single boat in over 3 months. Some buyers would rather forfeit deposits than pay the balance. That's why this Riva 50T needs to be moved. People worry this super yacht will sit in the shipyard for a year or two with no buyers. If that happens, it'll be wasted. Martin snorted. You're acting coy now that you've got a deal. It's good it can be sold, so stop whining. What Devonshire said wasn't pleasant, but it was true. Customers aren't test pilots for your new technologies. He hesitated then, seeing Griff smile faintly, added, Don't tell me your next 50T will still cost $18 million to build. With your experience, cutting costs by 30% shouldn't be impossible, right? Roughly. With current prices, it might even be a bit lower. Many raw material suppliers are in trouble too. Some high-grade timbers have dropped over 60% in price. 60%? Martin blinked, then grinned. Of course your company isn't collapsing over $1 million or $2 million, so you're using funds to buy raw materials at rock-bottom prices? Heh, Martin, you're a real scavenger. You can smell the reason from a mile away. Griff glanced around as if checking no one could overhear. Is it safe? Martin thought for a moment, then stood up, grabbed a bottle of wine and glasses, and suggested, Let's take this to the outdoor cafe. They walked outside and sat down. Martin leaned in eagerly. Tell me. Griff lowered his voice. You know lignum vitae from the Bahamas, right? Of course. Everyone in the boat world knows lignum vitae. It's rare and invaluable to shipyards. Griff spoke quietly and mysteriously. I don't know why exactly, but 2 months ago, several directors at our parent company, Lafarge, and at Riva, who together control 40% of the shares, started quietly buying lignum vitae from the Bahamas in small batches. The timber is stored in the materials warehouse for this 50T. If I hadn't been assigned to do the sea trials and sell this boat, I wouldn't have had a chance to check the warehouse alone. You wouldn't believe it. The Italians, doing something they thought was top secret, actually changed the warehouse password to a password from a year ago. Chapter 311, Shipyard Delivered to the Doorstep. Martin laughed at Griff's complaint. What's so strange about that? You Italians are relaxed to the extreme. If you aren't an hour late, your coworkers will single you out. By 3:30, they're getting ready to leave. By 4, no one's doing serious work, just coffee and pastries. With that attitude, can you really expect them to be reliable? After a few more laughs, Martin fixed Griff with a grin. So you're saying? Griff didn't answer. He turned to look at the Riva 50T nearby and watched it for a long moment. When Martin still didn't get it, Griff sighed. I wish our meager savings could move the rare timber market. $1 or $2 million invested in lignum vitae wouldn't even make a ripple. Then he turned his head and stared at the Riva 50T yacht, the only vessel with its lights on in the distance. Martin followed his gaze quickly. Only then did Griff look back at him, his expression unreadable. Fuck, are you crazy or just desperate enough to be stupid? Griff snapped. You said William Devonhill reeks of blood, and you still want to cook up a scheme against him? Martin stared at the madness in Griff's eyes, terrified. His hand trembled as he pointed. Aren't you scared he'll shut us up if we tip him off? And don't forget the Faraday Group's reach in Italy. If they find out we're sabotaging them, you think we'll walk away unscathed? Griff sneered at Martin, who had only moments before been so bold with him. Now he sounded like every swaggering American who folded into a sheep at the sight of real danger. He remembered, with a flush to his face, how close he'd come to pissing his pants standing in front of William. If not for that fear, he never would have dragged Martin into this. Part of Griff's plan had been practical. Martin could handle William directly. Griff could hang back as insurance. Griff had met William only because William wanted to rent a yacht. He had hoped William would take the lead and shield him from Faraday's threats. He had no idea William could hear every word. A palm-sized Black Hornet drone, piloted by Sunday, hovered in the bushes 2 meters from them. If Martin hadn't led Griff out of the office, William wouldn't have been able to catch their conversation so easily. William let out a quiet sigh of relief. People died for money. Birds died for food. Griff's irrational behavior suddenly made sense. As long as it didn't threaten him directly, William couldn't care less. Besides, he already knew Griff's trump card. Who was actually scheming against whom now was unclear. But the eavesdropping left William slightly distracted from his workout, which infuriated Ambrosio. Riding a workout high, she cursed at William, shoved him to the ground, and began doing squats herself. Exactly what William wanted. With his hands clasped behind his head, he smiled and cheered her on, continuing to listen in on Martin and Griff. If you force me to give up, maybe I'll rename the yacht Ambrosio, he joked. You said it. Ambrosio grinned, planting a kiss on him. It's just squats. I'll win, even if my legs are dead tomorrow. Back outside, Money had already thrown Griff's caution to the wind. How will we know if we don't try? He urged. As long as we're prepared, William Devonhill isn't going to travel across countries just to silence us. Do you think 2 middle-aged guys like us would sit here and wait to be eliminated without a backup plan? This timber deal isn't even William's specialty. We're doing the legwork and collecting the intel. If we help him make a fortune, it's only fair he shares the profits. My appetite's not huge. 10 million each, that'd do me. 20 million between us. Griff sat beside Martin, arm around his shoulders, coaxing. Think about it, buddy. Killing someone takes motive and cost. We're just ordinary participants. If anything leaks, we're more vulnerable than he is. It doesn't make sense for William to risk everything to erase 2 people over 20 million. Martin wavered, tempted, but his years of experience wouldn't be swayed so easily. He wanted the 10 million, but he knew to weigh risks. Sweat beaded cold on his brow as a darker possibility struck him. Have you ever thought William Devonhill is worth tens of billions? Martin said, panic rising. What if he's not after a small timber profit, but instead targets the directors of Riva Shipyard, or even your Riva Shipyard itself and its parent company, the Faraday Group? Fuck no. Griff's face went pale. Why would he target Riva and Faraday? Are you an idiot? Martin snapped. Your shipyard is the Rolls-Royce of yachts. The Faraday Group owns 8 mid to high-end yacht brands. For someone like William, 1 or 200 million is pocket change compared to controlling a globally renowned shipyard. Do you think an acquisition like that wouldn't make front-page headlines worldwide? In a market crash, the press devours stories about the super-rich stirring things up. Even the haters feed the coverage. Italy might even welcome his investment. William Devonhill is more famous and richer than Faraday. Even if he can't buy the whole group, taking Riva alone would boost his reputation and theirs. It's mutually beneficial. Wouldn't he be tempted? Martin began pacing, more animated. Once you've got real money, it's not only about making more. Protecting and expanding influence matters. Diversifying internationally is how they do it. Griff was speechless. He could only mutter, this. He wanted to argue, but couldn't. If he were William, he would go after Riva too. The opportunity was sitting right there in his lap, and he, Robert Griff, was about to hand William the knife. Chapter 312, 2 different outcomes. In truth, that knife was already in William's hand. William had heard every word, perfectly. Martin's logic struck a chord. He had wealth, enormous wealth, and spreading his influence into respected, influential companies made strategic sense. He already owned Aston Martin. Add Riva Yachts, and he'd only be missing a private jet manufacturer to complete a sea, land, and air triumvirate. If all three became leaders in their fields, his reach would be formidable. The thought excited him, but Ambrosio's fitness mania had already subdued him in less than a minute. Yes, she exclaimed, kissing him again. Darling, you must keep your promise. From now on, this boat is Ambrosio. William wanted to smack himself. A pleasant workout had turned into a competition, and his girlfriend was determined to win. It felt less like training and more like being toyed with, but a promise was a promise. He glared at Ambrosio, feigning exhaustion on the floor, got up, slipped on his bathrobe, and said with mock resignation, All right, Ambrosio it is. You pick the style for the yacht's name. Once you decide, I'll have someone engrave your name on it. Yes! Ambrosio jumped up, grinning, and without waiting for William, hurried back to the master bedroom to research on the computer. Damn, this is entirely my fault, he muttered, shaking his head. Then he wandered up to the third-deck pool and lay back in the water, still smiling. William wasn't about to let such a golden opportunity slip away, and he had no intention of involving Martin or Griff any further. To him, they were irrelevant now, more of an annoyance than an asset. He respected Martin in some ways, but if you schemed against him, you had to be ready for a counterstrike. He turned to Sunday. Call Brian Mills in Switzerland for me. Yes, sir. The call connected quickly. Good evening, boss. Good evening. Oh, wait, it must be only 4 a.m. there. Sorry, I forgot the time difference. That's fine, boss. I wasn't sleeping anyway. Barney and I are taking turns watching the trading room. It's my shift. I'm having a few drinks and a barbecue with the guys now, then I'll crash. By the time I wake, it'll be morning for you. Perfect for your call. Is there an outcome on the Debis matter? William sat up, eager. Yes, boss. The final contract will be completed at 7 a.m. Swiss time tomorrow, 8 a.m. London time, right when the market opens. Your client manager, Mr. Felix, will give you the precise profit, but I estimate about 3 times the initial investment. Only 3 times? Didn't you use 10 times leverage? I'm sorry, boss. I don't manage the leverage details. Mr. Felix handles that. William didn't need to ask Felix directly. He had the authority to check the independent server for the transaction. He tapped his earpiece, and Sunday answered, Sir, task established. Estimated time, 10 minutes. 3 times was lower than William had hoped, and he didn't like it. His voice tightened when he spoke to Brian. Do me a favor. Tell me, Brian said, catching the tone. Martin Donnell, manager of the New York Yacht Club. Make him disappear for a while. William softened as soon as he thought of Martin's children and the house on Long Island he had borrowed for them. No, don't go too far. Give him trouble that's serious enough to occupy him, but not ruin him. I don't want his family to fall apart. That's easy, boss. Nothing in the U.S. is more painful than tax trouble. I'll make sure Mr. Martin Donnell gets tangled up and ends up fined a few tens of thousands of dollars. Not a few tens of thousands. Exactly $120,000. No more, no less. Give him a reason to serve Ambrosio more diligently. Understood, boss. Exactly 120,000. No problem. Remember, he has 2 children. This is a lesson, not destruction. Goodbye. Okay, boss. Goodbye. After hanging up, William had Sunday dial Barney. The call rang longer this time before connecting. Barney answered, sounding tired. Hello, boss. What can I do for you? Sorry to bother you so late. Is Danny Archer available for a job? A simple one. Seduce someone's wife. Who offended you so badly? Barney chuckled. That Sicilian who tried to steal my money. If I don't make him suffer for that, I'm not worth being William Cavendish. Barney sighed at the mention of money. You're merciful to spare his life. If the price is right, Archer will do it. He's planning to settle in Brazil with a reporter, Maddie Bowen, he met in Sierra Leone. He won't refuse a low-risk job. And Debus tracking him down in rural Sicily is less likely than in Switzerland. No problem. Good. Send him to Sicily now. With his face, 3 days should be enough to take care of Italian women, right? Barney laughed. How would I know? But if you say 3 days, then it's 3 days. Fine, I'll send the details. Tell Archer there's no upfront commission, but if he does this well, I'll include him next time we make money together. Bye. Bye, boss. Barney hung up, speechless at William's willingness to break up a family, but secretly relieved for the Sicilian, alive and only embarrassed. He was also pleased for Archer. Not everyone gets a job with William Cavendish. William had Sunday recall the Blackwing drones he'd released. He was done with Martin and Griff for the moment. He climbed out of the pool, went to the cockpit, started the yacht, and headed out to sea. Martin and Griff, debating whether to go to the yacht to confront William, were caught off guard by his sudden departure. If they missed today, who knew when they'd see him again? Griff resigned himself to leaving. We'll just have to wait here. I need to go to London to sign the yacht contract. That's the only way, Martin agreed, dejected. When Griff left, Martin stood grim-faced for a long time before dialing a number he'd just committed to memory. Chapter 313, Luck and Misfortune, and another billion-dollar profit. William, now at sea and waiting for Sunday's confirmation on the short sale records, felt his phone vibrate. An unfamiliar New York number flashed on the screen. Puzzled, he answered. Hello? Hello, Mr. Cavendish. I'm Martin Donnell. I apologize for calling so late, but I need to report an urgent matter. William already suspected what Martin wanted. Instead of asking, he said, First, how did you get my number? I don't recall giving you my card. I'm terribly sorry, Mr. Cavendish. When you gave Chef Hunter your number, I happened to be standing behind him and saw it on his phone screen. It was an accident, I swear. Maybe I pay too much attention to your affairs, but after that one glance, I remembered it clearly. William could verify that easily. Hold on. He clicked his earpiece, and Sunday returned 24 seconds later. Sir, according to the yacht's video, Martin Donnell is telling the truth. Very well. Continue. Martin exhaled in relief and then began describing everything that had happened after he left the yacht. He repeated his conversation with Griff verbatim and carefully described Griff's expression. When he finished the full account, he fell silent and waited for William's reply. Very good. It seems my rare act of kindness wasn't wasted, William chuckled, and in the terrified silence on the other end of the line, he added, Tomorrow the U.S. tax authorities will come for you. Charges of tax evasion. God, Martin cried. Don't worry. The final penalty will be $120,000. Not a cent more, not a cent less. Exactly $120,000. That is your punishment and a small mercy for the sake of your 2 lovely children. You wouldn't be unwilling to hand over that $120,000, would you, Martin? Martin stammered. He couldn't speak. He realized now that William already knew about the conversation he had had with Griff. The hope he'd had when he made that call evaporated, replaced by fear, and oddly, a sense of relief. He was relieved that William favored men with family values, and relieved that he hadn't been blinded by the $10 million temptation. After Griff left, Martin had confessed everything to William. Yes, sir. I'll pay the fine honestly. Good. You are indeed a smart man. Work hard, and if Ambrosio is satisfied, you might even get to be her special assistant. Then your $600,000 loan could be paid off in less than a year. And I think you understand why I want Ambrosio to invite you personally. Yes, sir. I understand. It's to avoid her thinking I'm your spy and to test my abilities. Then that's settled. I look forward to your performance, Mr. Donner. Thank you, sir. Thank you for your kindness. Haha, you should thank yourself. Thank yourself for being a good father. Otherwise, your fate and Griff's would have been very different. Martin wanted to beg for Griff, to plead for his old friend, but he knew it was useless. Any attempt to persuade William could only make things worse, both for himself and for Griff. In the end, he could only force out a quiet, "Thank you, sir. Good night, sir," and hang up. William felt a flicker of curiosity about how this high school graduate who had climbed to managing the New York Yacht Club would perform. A few days later, Martin, by then unconcerned about an IRS probe thanks to William's intervention, heard through an Italian contact what had happened to Griff. When Griff returned to Italy, he discovered evidence that his young, beautiful wife had been secretly meeting someone at home. After a huge fight, and before a divorce suit could be fully underway, his wife retaliated and exposed his financial misdeeds. The fallout was immediate. Griff was summoned to the police, his assets were stripped in the divorce and given to his wife, and he was hit with lawsuits from Faraday and Riva for accepting kickbacks, facing a possible 5-year prison term. From New York, Martin grew even more afraid of William, and once again grateful for that rare mercy. After dealing with those two players, William settled into the driver's seat and listened to Sunday's report on the profits from shorting De Beers. When he heard the profit was only a little over 3 times what he'd expected, he swore under his breath. Too much? What a joke. I only put in $500 million. With 10 times leverage, that's $5 billion. As soon as we started, De Beers folded like it was going bankrupt. Sunday's briefing, however, reminded him why the returns were smaller. 70% of De Beers' mined diamonds were stored in the underground vault at their London headquarters. Roughly 60% of the group's value was tied up in those stones they were unwilling to dump on the market. Their truly available liquid assets were a bit over $10 billion. Diamonds were also illiquid. You couldn't sell large quantities without crashing prices, which would only hasten De Beers' death. That limited their ability to raise funds quickly. Moreover, too many others had followed William into the short. Most institutions and investors who had initially bet against him chose to liquidate and cut their losses rather than double down. And the evidence William's operation had produced was devastating. The whole blood diamond chain had been exposed in detail, and even the company's boss had been photographed buying blood diamonds personally. Faced with that level of proof, De Beers had no confidence of winning the public battle. So they hoarded cash as ammunition and turned to the British government for help, using taxes, layoffs, and the diamond industry's political clout as bargaining chips. That government intervention was exactly the outcome William least wanted. De Beers was not a fragile tech darling that could be rendered worthless overnight. Their vault holdings, worth under $10 billion now, would likely rebound to around $15 billion over a few years, and their major African mines still provided solid backing. To avoid direct state rescue and to blunt any counterattack, De Beers' executives chose to sit tight until someone made a move. As William had suspected, many large companies and investors still eyed De Beers as an attractive long-term bet. The industry slogan, "Diamonds are forever," still carried enormous cultural weight. Even if it was a poor store of resale value, demand, especially driven by what women loved, would keep making diamonds profitable. Felix, following William's contingency plan, had already taken profits and begun liquidating positions to limit downside as the situation developed. Chapter 314, Not Everything Goes As You Plan. Sunday had audited every short-selling operation on the independent server, and Felix and his 10 traders had no procedural problems during the trades. That reassured William. Losing a little profit to uncertainty was acceptable. As long as his own people had done their jobs, there was nothing to complain about. He ran the numbers. About $800 million of the gains had come directly from De Beers' coffers. The other $8.3 billion came from institutions and individual investors caught by the squeeze, roughly $9.1 billion in total, amounting to $16.3 billion in profit across the market. It was a massive haul. But the fact that his primary target, De Beers itself, had slipped away, gnawed at him. He wanted to make sure the company couldn't recover and hunt him down later. Originally, William had planned, after shorting De Beers, to quietly accumulate shares and become a hidden major shareholder. In a few years, such a position could be extremely lucrative. He had plenty of cash and plenty of time to wait. But he wasn't the only smart person in the world. Many corporations that had long coveted De Beers' influence were now circling the weakened company. De Beers, with a century of market dominance, knew how to defend itself. They had kept a large cash reserve, prepared to fight any hostile acquisition. If an outside buyer started buying heavily, De Beers could simply compete for shares. If an acquirer bought 10 shares, De Beers only had to fight for 1 or 2 to send the price up. Rising prices would scare off sellers and blow up the acquirer's cost. Acquiring a blocking stake, roughly 33%, would become prohibitively expensive, and without that veto power, any takeover was pointless. Understanding that dynamic, William abandoned the idea of trying to pick up De Beers at bargain prices. Small purchases, or a few $100 million worth of stock, would be meaningless against a company with the liquidity, influence, and determination to defend itself. He needed a different plan. Chapter 315, $1 billion worth of Chinese antiques for sale. I sighed and tried to talk myself into it. Everything couldn't possibly go according to plan. Making $163 billion was already a catastrophic success. My eyes roved across the room. Debenhams meant nothing to me now. Might as well use it. Give it to Gareth Mallory as a favor. Let the nobles pick up Debenhams shares in tiny lots at rock-bottom prices and turn those money-hungry aristocrats into the next scapegoats. If they could make money openly and legally, the struggling nobles wouldn't care whether Debenhams was a pillar of British industry. Faced with that kind of profit, not even the British government, let alone moral scruples, would stop them. That way, I could curry favor with some nobles and cement the narrative. The malicious short-selling of Debenhams was orchestrated by the nobility. They might not be the biggest winners, but they'd be the visible force behind it. "Connect me to Gareth Mallory," I ordered. "All right, sir." The line clicked through. Before Gareth could start swearing, William spoke up. "Debenhams still has about $1.4 billion left. You should stop now." Woken at 4 in the morning, Gareth choked on the news. He didn't even get out an F-bomb. He inhaled hard. "How do you even know something so confidential?" he demanded. Then, as if it struck him, he gasped, "Good God, Duke of Devonshire?" "Are you an idiot?" William scoffed before answering. "Listen, if I were you, I'd liquidate and buy Debenhams while it's cheap. Wait a few years. Doubling your money wouldn't be a problem." "Is this information confirmed?" Gareth asked in a low voice. He already believed William. After all the dealings between them, he trusted William's instincts about money. "I've told you what I know. Whether you take it or not is your business. As for the reason, those bastards at Debenhams surrendered straight away and cost me hundreds of millions. I want them to suffer. If you nobles can get seats on Debenhams' board, it'll be interesting." William's tone was casual but loaded. "You think I'm one of those easily swayed rubes? You're trying to make the nobility a target," Gareth snapped. "No, you're not a fool." William's short reply was meant to soothe, and did for a moment. Then he couldn't resist. "Calling you a fool would be an insult to fools. You're an imbecile, an idiot, trash. Your greed is about the only thing you're better at than actual fools." Gareth sat there stunned for a beat before snapping back. "Screw you, William Devonshire. Don't forget you're a noble too." "That's precisely why you should be grateful," William replied coolly. "Because I'm one of you, I'm not going to prosecute you for spreading the short-selling news that cost me hundreds of millions." Gareth snorted. "Do you really think I'm like those money-crazed idiots? Leaking it to other nobles is exactly what you wanted. Don't underestimate the aristocracy. 60 years of lessons taught us endurance and subtlety. The ones making a fuss are the desperate. The real players stay hidden. Hiding in the shadows isn't your invention." William yawned. "What hiddenness? They've been pushed so far down they can't breathe. That's why they hide." "All right," Gareth said. "At least you're not a total idiot. Since some are on the verge of collapse, tell them now is the best time to buy Debenhams. If it doesn't double in 10 years, I'll take their surname." "What?" William barked. Why should I take their surname? Is buying in now really the right call? Of course, the stock hasn't hit bottom yet, but by the time it does, the little guys won't have a chance. You understand that principle, don't you? Fine, I'll tell the people who need to know. But William, you can't always use me as your messenger. Reach out to some influential nobles who actually like you. Do that yourself. Haha, I'll give you a ha. William's mockery was obvious. No favors, only messy business. Do you really think I don't know that the old fox, the Duke of Devonshire, and his circle are watching me? That old fox, Gareth said helplessly, to make sure his descendants inherit money and title, didn't just sit by while I heavily shorted Debenhams, he secretly lent his son money to short it too. A fox who would sell out his own people for his family isn't a good ally, Gareth continued. I don't believe you don't know why he does it. Everything's for the family, for the name. William did know. It wasn't complicated, a declining family head making contingency moves. The collapse in Debenham's share price was an opportunity. If the Duke were healthier, he might be furious. Now he was eager for Debenhams to sink so he could undervalue his holdings for inheritance purposes. A 40% plunge meant his heirs would pay 40% less in inheritance tax, hundreds of millions saved. So the Duke tacitly tolerated the turmoil. It served his ends. And don't pretend you're innocent, Gareth went on. If you hadn't wanted to use us as shields, would you have told me you were shorting Debenhams? William laughed. Mutual exploitation, then. I'll at least let you have some soup. Rich soup. Making money is sweet, isn't it, Gareth? Gareth was quiet for a long moment, then sighed. All right. For the sake of money, others won't block you openly. But we want something simple. While you eat the meat, at least let those in the same camp have a sip of the soup. As long as you're not trying to swallow me whole, meat and bone, I'll allow soup. But I'm the chef here. A 30% processing fee seems fair. If there's only output and no return, friendship and business both die. Gareth considered it, then said, Wait for my call. It should be fine. Everyone's desperate for you to join them. That's proof you know how to make money. We need you. Ha, everyone needs me indeed. People flock to whoever helps them profit, but no one helps for free. William narrowed his eyes, waiting for Gareth's callback. He knew he couldn't remain entirely aloof from his own class, but he wasn't about to be the generous benefactor. If old foxes like the Duke of Devonshire were willing to hand over 30% of the gains, William wouldn't mind cooperating a few times. It wasn't charity. Sharing manageable pieces of wealth and information would quiet them, get them to make money for him, and use their influence to grease other wheels. Mutual benefit, at least for a while. He didn't expect to be an outsider forever, but he had no interest in being anyone's junior. Nobility, at its core, was about preserving family honor, status, and privileges. If you cared, they were exclusive and arrogant, all courtesy on the surface and entitlement beneath. Some people still bought the act. Half an hour later, William stopped the boat, pulled out his sea fishing gear, and stood on the third deck in bored silence. Perhaps because he wasn't focused, not a single fish bit after an hour. Chapter 316. Even scraps can yield significant profits if utilized well. William wasn't angry. He was just killing time. Another half hour passed before Gareth finally called back. We can accept your terms in principle, Gareth said, but we want to substitute that 30% profit with other assets. Many of us, Duke Devon and other senior nobles, are getting old. We want their descendants to be the ones to cooperate with you so they can preserve wealth and titles for inheritance. No problem, William replied. I want a return. I don't care if it's cash. Tell me what you're offering. But to be clear, unless it's a castle in London, don't waste my time with rundown estates elsewhere. I'm not a junk collector. All right. Gareth's mouth tightened. He immediately crossed several London castles off his mental list and said sarcastically, Only an idiot would hand you a London castle. There was a pause, then Gareth continued, sounding bored. We have land, wineries, and artworks. The land is... Unless it's land in Oxford, don't bother, William cut in. He didn't even have to think. Those lands weren't well located, and he wasn't interested in maintaining unprofitable parcels in remote spots. Wineries, unless they're one of the 5 great Bordeaux chateaux, don't tell me. English vineyards aren't even as good as Scottish ones. What would I do with some obscure label? Just tell me about the artworks. I'm interested in those. If it's just the artworks, we can't finalize things over the phone, Gareth said helplessly. You'll need experts to come to London and appraise them. No problem. Where are these artworks from? This, Gareth hesitated. The Celestial Dynasty. All of them? William asked, surprised. Probably. And there are also some Eastern European antiques. William pretended to be annoyed, but inside he was thrilled. Do you think I'm an idiot? What would I do with Celestial Dynasty pieces during a market crash and little Eastern European countries' antiques? No thanks. If you insist on the Celestial Dynasty pieces, we can't discuss it by phone. You'll have to send people to examine them properly, Gareth insisted. Then he added, almost apologetically, the 30% profit you're owed this time is $92 million, but those Celestial Dynasty pieces might be worth more than 10 times that. That revelation made William even more pleased than surprised. These old noble families were certainly in decline, but their private collections were substantial. Just 5 or 6 families could hold a trove of Celestial Dynasty antiques worth enormous sums. Their history was long and grand, but their foresight was lacking. At the moment, the overseas purchasing power of people from the Celestial Dynasty hadn't yet been fully realized, and many English nobles dismissed the value of those antiques. They had no idea that in less than 20 years, England might be second-rate and that the Celestial Dynasty market would dwarf them. Fortunately for William, their short-sightedness made large-scale bargains possible. If he could buy the lot, in fewer than 10 years, those pieces could be worth $5 billion. In 15 years, maybe $20 billion. Better than gold, true heirlooms. Relying on those antiques alone, he could make the Forbes list. He only worried about whether some future prodigal heir would squander his gains. William also saw tactical value. If he bought them outright with cash, Duke Devon and the others wouldn't agree. They'd have to pay taxes, and they'd lose their descendants' chance to inherit wealth. So William had a different plan. Trade the nobles' information about the lignum vitae speculation and the Arctic bear mafia as the bargain. It was simple math. Celestial Dynasty antiques would skyrocket in value. The lignum vitae speculation and shorting the Faraday Group could only squeeze out a few $100 million at most. Faraday wasn't Ferrari. It was a yacht maker worth under $1 billion. And if he exposed Pushkin, the Arctic Bear Gang's channels across Eastern Europe would be disrupted. William didn't want to handle gang takedowns himself. He had neither the means nor the will, but he could sell the information to Duke Devon, attract their attention, and let them deal with the trouble. That would weaken the Arctic Bear Mafia and reduce the chance of retaliation. 2 birds, 1 stone. He had made up his mind. "You still there?" he asked. "Of course. I almost thought you'd nodded off," Gareth grumbled. "Cut the nonsense, Pi. I'll send people to appraise the Celestial Dynasty pieces. I only want the best. If they're junk, our agreement is void." William couldn't realistically expect to acquire every Celestial Dynasty item. He had to be careful not to appear too eager, or the old foxes would withhold the best pieces for future bargaining. But he also couldn't drag things out. Once the Celestial Dynasty market took off, timing would matter. He decided to bait them, lure Duke Devon and the others into the promise of quick money and dangerous trouble. "If you want to profit, bring out the best for me to choose from," he said. "If I'm satisfied, I have 2 paths to wealth. One is quick, 1 to 3 months, with estimated profits of $300 to $400 million. If you're bolder, it could turn into owning a mid-sized group worth $1 billion. The other path is longer and messier in Eastern Europe. It's long-term and involves dark elements. For that information, I charge a $200 million fee. But handled properly, that route could bring $500 to $600 million a year easily. Be ruthless and unafraid of retribution or without heirs, and $1 billion a year isn't impossible." "$1 billion a year? Why don't you do it yourself?" Gareth asked. "From what you're saying, it involves the underworld. Eastern Europe is huge. How can you guarantee we can cleanly deal with the other side?" "I already said it carries risk. I don't need those $500 million or $1 billion, William replied. "As for the information, I guarantee its accuracy. We'll know how many mistresses the leaders and lieutenants have down to the smallest detail, and I offer after-sales service. If someone becomes a problem, pay $1 to $5 million, and I'll ensure that annoying person won't be alive in 3 days. Ha, you really are money-grubbing, William, Gareth snorted. Charging extra for after-sales? That's a secondary fee. And do you think great nobles don't already have people for that? You won't get a hair of that money. Excellent, Gareth. Your protest removed my hesitation about raising the price, William said. Now the information is worth $300 million. You bast. Gareth began to curse, then held himself back. He genuinely believed that if he swore more, William would raise the price again. Thank you. You don't have to be so polite. Curse me a few more times if you like, William chuckled. All right, you win. Tomorrow I'll upload the information to a website. You'll open it with a password I give you. That'll be $300 million, plus the earlier $92 million, $392 million total. We'll deduct that with Celestial Dynasty antiques at a 30% discount. My people will select Celestial Dynasty pieces with a combined value of $560 million. Does that work for you? How should I know if there's a problem? I'm just the messenger, Gareth replied. But personally, I trust your honesty. Still, shouldn't you tell me about that easy way to make $300 to $400 million too? Heh, William said. It's more satisfying to make you chew the bitter before the sweet. Savor the unpleasant part first, and the good part will taste better after. Go to hell. Aren't you just afraid we'll take the easy route and abandon the hard one? Don't worry about that. If it's true and we can make $1 billion a year, plenty of people will put money above some vague notion of karma. Even among the great nobles, some can't even afford to keep mistresses anymore, Gareth said lightly. Then it's settled. My people will be in London in a few days, William said at the end. Look after my woman. She's a beauty. If any cockroaches bother her, you know what to do. No problem. You're our patron now. I guarantee no one will dare touch your woman, Gareth chuckled. Bye. Chapter 317. William the Miser. After hanging up, William sat in the driver's seat, thinking through the advantages and pitfalls of this cooperation. The benefits were obvious. If he could help Duke Devon and the others reach the target profits this time, many English nobles would be inclined to join the venture. Then he could acquire as many ancient Chinese artifacts as he wanted. To William, this arrangement, part recycling, part profiteering, offered much higher upside than his usual methods. Take the Eastern Europe opportunity he'd mentioned to Gareth. Had he handled it the old way, he'd have cleaned out Pushkin's people and walked away, uninterested in black market affairs. By placing the operation in Duke Devon's hands, men desperate to create a fortune for their line, he simultaneously eradicated Pushkin's remnants more thoroughly, placated wary English nobles, and secured a hefty cut for himself. Opportunities like this would recur, widening his financial channels and influence among the aristocracy. Whoever could lead others to wealth ran the show. If more nobles came to see him as the path to riches, no one would dare provoke him. That didn't mean he would drop his guard. In this era, friends could be backstabbers. Being useful now didn't prevent someone from scheming to replace you later. William had no intention of giving up his share. As he'd told Gareth, he might let his allies drink the soup or eat scraps, but if they wanted the meat, they'd have to put something equally valuable on the table or something that interested him. Any attempt to take without offering equal value would be met with sharp consequences. If he couldn't act openly, he had quieter methods. He turned to Sunday. Check Abigail's status with the U.S. National Archives. See whether she's still under surveillance. Understood, sir. A little over 10 minutes later, Sunday reported, Sir, the investigation into Miss Abigail has closed. She lost her job at the National Archives and has been home for 2 months. I reviewed surveillance footage of her over that period. The people following her disappeared about a month ago, but her phone remains monitored. The records show she is not restricted from leaving the country. Not being barred from leaving is good enough. William smiled. Sunday, have an art company send Abigail an official invitation in their name and order a new phone to be delivered to her. All right, sir? Done. The phone store will deliver it to Miss Abigail's home in 15 minutes. Since when are American stores so thoughtful as to deliver to the door? With an extra $500 tip, I don't think any phone shop would refuse home delivery, Sunday replied. William stiffened. When did you start wasting my money? You authorized me to access your account for tasks, sir, Sunday said in a tone that mixed amusement and admonition. By the way, apart from your mother, you are the stingiest person I've encountered. You've acquired $20 billion in less than 9 months, 250 days. In the 10 seconds we've been speaking, you've made the equivalent of 1,811 $500 tips. The $500,000 allowance you give Miss Ambrosio each month isn't even what you earn in 10 minutes. I pity Miss Ambrosio. Shut up, William's face flushed. He quickly scanned the yacht with his mental power and relaxed only when he confirmed Ambrosio was in the master bedroom. If she'd heard Sunday's jibe, she'd have made a scene. He recovered his stubborn tone. You don't know. I'm protecting Ambrosio. If people knew she had a lot of cash, she'd be targeted in minutes. It's better this way. Outsiders think Ambrosio and I are just fooling around. Since you named the yacht Ambrosio, I doubt anyone would think you're merely playing around, Sunday replied dryly. You wouldn't understand, you artificial mind. As long as I don't transfer title of the yacht to her, outsiders will only assume we're playing that much more. Whether he was just playing around had been true at first, but lately William found himself enjoying Ambrosio's company. He wasn't the marrying type, he'd made that clear to himself, but that didn't mean he couldn't be with someone as long as things felt right. Abigail, meanwhile, remained tied to his mind for a different reason. She was an expert in ancient Chinese artifacts. A call interrupted his thoughts. Sir, it's Miss Abigail. Patch her through. Hello, this is Abigail. Mr. Devonshire? It's me, Abby. Long time no see. How have you been? On hearing his voice, Abigail let out a half laugh, half complaint. Oh, so you remember me. A few months ago, you sneaked back to England and left me in Washington, D.C. to be investigated. William Devonshire. Were you that heartless when you slept with me? I'm sorry, Abby. I didn't contact you to protect you. Now that you're okay, haven't I reached out? I remember our agreement. I'm calling to see if you can come to England to oversee the acquisition of those ancient Chinese pieces and help with the museum. Are you serious? Abigail's annoyance vanished, replaced by excitement. When can I go? If you're free, a private jet will be at Washington's airport in half an hour. It'll fly you to Switzerland and then on to London. I'm packing right now. God, I can finally leave this suffocating place. I don't want to spend another minute in Washington. Pack a few changes. You can buy the rest in London. All expenses are on me. Consider it a welcome gift for your new job. If you want, look at houses on Kensington Garden Street. I've wanted a villa there. I never had the time. As a reward, you can move into the new place. Just let me move in? Abigail laughed. No problem, boss. I promise you'll get what you want soon. Maybe next time I see you, I'll be in the new house. All right. Safe travels, Miss Abigail. Bye, boss. When the call ended, William told Sunday, tell Felix at the Swiss National Bank about Abigail's flight. Besides antique matters, have him assign someone to accompany her for other needs. Also recruit a few Chinese experts to help appraise the pieces. Pay can be flexible, but the confidentiality agreement must be ironclad. Understood, sir. Chapter 318, Prequel to the Chase, End 1. Back in the master bedroom, after an intimate interlude with Ambrosio, William fell asleep holding her. While he slept peacefully, two brothers in North Brooklyn, Viggo Tarasov and Abram Tarasov, couldn't sleep at all. An hour earlier, they'd received a call from Pushkin's top enforcer, Ted Lenson. Ted wanted to meet with the brothers and see the leader Pushkin had planted near Viggo as an informant. Viggo was in a tight spot. Meeting the brothers was no problem, but the planted leader had already been taken out by John Wick. With no informant to show, Viggo decided the only course was to eliminate Ted. But Ted wasn't stupid. He was lukewarm when Viggo suggested meeting at the nightclub. Only as the appointed hour neared did Ted change the location. He pushed the meeting to the observation deck atop the Empire State Building. Viggo, who had already mustered his men and waited for Ted to fall into the trap, felt unease. If he went, perhaps Ted already knew of his betrayal and had set a counter-trap. If he didn't go, maybe Ted's change of location was a diversion to flush him out. Either way, the situation had just become a lot more dangerous. Before Pushkin's death, the two brothers had been nothing more than New York crime bosses, their prestige insufficient to command absolute loyalty. If word leaked that they were disloyal, the Polar Bear Gang in New York would erupt into infighting. Only once Pushkin was gone could they break away and act independently, and then their actions could be justified. Both brothers looked at John Wick, who sat on the sofa drinking whiskey, and found a measure of confidence in him. Starting a war carried too many risks. Viggo hardened his resolve and ran through the preparations and countermeasures he'd arranged. He changed into the bulletproof suit Abram had brought, went to the safe, and took out a disc. "Let's go," he told his brother. "We're going to see Ted." It took over 10 minutes to get a dozen men ready to go ahead and scout around the Empire State Building. Abram drove Viggo and John Wick, with the remaining men following about a kilometer behind. They would disembark on the next street and walk the rest of the way. With a vanguard in front, support in the rear, and an expert by his side, Viggo finally felt a lot more at ease. About 20 minutes later, the car stopped in front of the Empire State Building. The advance team reported, "All clear," over the walkie. John Wick stepped out first and entered the building to take a look. After a moment, he nodded to Viggo and Abram, who were watching him closely. They followed, took the elevator to the observation deck, and, when they could see Ted and 3 suited men behind him, both brothers breathed a quiet sigh of relief. Ted had been suspicious, but he hadn't yet definitively turned on them. John Wick's expression tightened when he saw the 3 men in suits. His instinct told him they were the same kind of operators Yuri Orlov had sent to hunt him, special forces. He couldn't tell if they were Vimple or Alpha, but they were professional killers all the same. Ted rose with a smile when he saw Viggo and Abram approach and reached out to embrace them. "Good evening, Viggo, Abram. Sorry to summon you here. I couldn't reach Kossoff by phone. Do you know what happened to Kossoff and his men? They've all disappeared." Viggo, who had spent the last 2 days preparing his response, answered with a dark, bitter look. "Of course you can't find Kossoff. I took care of him and his men." Ted blinked at the blunt confession. "You killed Kossoff? You came to see me with only 1 man beside you. There must be a reason I don't know. Why?" Viggo's eyes flashed. "Why?" he spat. "I'd like to ask you why Kossoff tried to kill me. Why did that bastard throw a grenade into my office?" He pulled a disc from his jacket and thrust it forward. "This is footage from the camera outside my office. It shows Kossoff trying to kill me. He brought men, opened fire, and tried to blow my office up." Ted took the disc, surprised, and for a moment felt a pang of regret. If Kossoff had succeeded in killing Viggo, Ted's path to power might have been easier. As details of past disappearances surfaced in his mind, like Andre vanishing with the money, Ted began to suspect that Andre and Kossoff might have conspired to usurp Viggo. Now Kossoff was dead, and Andre was missing. Viggo continued, "I was in my office alone that day. Lucky for me. I'd intentionally been alone to settle something with some people from the Continental. Kossoff thought it was his chance. He didn't know the assassin from the Continental was there. He failed to kill me. Instead, he was taken out. Otherwise, I wouldn't have had the chance to see you." Ted, watching the disc, felt uneasy that Pushkin could be listening in by phone. He turned to the men behind him. "Find me a TV and a player." "Understood." About 10 minutes later, they played the footage. The clip started with a masked, impeccably dressed man, John Wick, knocking and entering Viggo's office. A few minutes later, Kossoff and his men, weapons drawn, crept into the hallway and moved toward the office. 2 of Kossoff's men were suddenly struck down by precise shots. Kossoff and the remainder took cover and opened fire on the office. A tense exchange followed. Kossoff and one of his men pulled grenades, but before they could get the pins out, both were shot. The rest were quickly neutralized. Minutes later, John Wick emerged from the office, armed and calm, and systematically eliminated anyone who pointed a gun at him. He carried someone out of Viggo's nightclub and vanished into the night. Ted, staring at the screen, asked, "Who was the person this man was carrying at the end?" Viggo stepped forward, furious and nearly out of control. "God damn you, Ted," he snapped, jabbing a finger in Ted's face. "That was my son. You've met Iosef several times." Ted ignored the outrage and looked at John Wick. Why did you take Viggo's son? John Wick, cold as ever, pointed at Viggo. He didn't pay. Didn't pay? For what? Ted demanded, incredulous. None of your business, John Wick replied flatly. Ted stared, anger and disbelief warring on his face. The footage made it impossible to dismiss John Wick's capability. Armed only with two 1911s, he'd fought from the third floor down to the main entrance, taking out over 30 polar bear thugs in less than 20 minutes. Ted couldn't imagine defeating a man like that. If he'd been in that situation, he'd have been lucky to survive, let alone fight his way out. Now, though, temptation beat out anger. Ted smiled at Wick. What if I pay for Viggo? John Wick's face remained impassive. Money is only part of the compensation. He owes me 120 hotel gold coins and... He glanced at Viggo, who was still working to appear angry, then pronounced a sum that made Viggo blanch. And $30 million. 30 million? Ted barked, then spun toward Viggo. What the hell did you do? How could it cost that much? Viggo stammered, then explained, 5 rivals and their bodyguards. 5 rivals for $30 million? Ted scoffed. What kind of rivals are we talking about? Do you think I'm an idiot? A few people for that kind of money? Viggo's expression hardened. I'm not making it up. A while back, several gang leaders from other countries, rivals who had serious grudges against us, and some politicians who were problems for us, were assassinated. You can verify it. 2 of them were trying to compete with Mr. Pushkin for the oil terminal. If I hadn't taken care of them, I couldn't have completed Pushkin's arrangements. Before Ted could respond, a voice spoke from a mobile phone on a nearby table, calm, authoritative. Viggo Tarasov, you did very well with the oil terminal. The Kossoff matter ends here. As a reward for your loyalty, starting this month, 1 million barrels of oil will be shipped from the Arctic Bear to New York every week. That oil will be your responsibility. Don't disappoint me, Viggo. Why, yes, Mr. Pushkin, Viggo answered, urgent and excited. The call sent a chill through John Wick. Pushkin's approval changed everything. The voice continued. Ted, your current mission is to find Andre and his men. Those who steal my money never come to a good end. I will leave their families for you to deal with when you return to the Arctic Bear. Understood, Mr. Pushkin, Ted replied, a thin smile finally softening his usually grim face. John Wick watched him, unblinking, and knew in his bones what kind of man Ted was. All right, that's all for today. Ted, use the check I gave you to settle Viggo's debt. Yes, sir, Ted replied, nodding. Viggo Tarasov, serve me well. From now on, you and Abram are on a new payroll. Goodbye. The call ended with a click. Even though Pushkin was offline, Viggo and Abram still bowed politely. Goodbye, Mr. Pushkin, they said. Ted moved to the rooftop table, produced a checkbook, and wrote a check for $30 million. He signed it, sat down, and waved at John Wick with a strained smile. Since you take private jobs, how about working for us? For the first time that evening, a hint of a smile crossed John's cold face. He walked over, examined the check for authenticity and amount, and then slipped it into the inner pocket of his jacket. Thank you, he said, smiling. He took a step closer. Maybe we can talk price, but I also have something you'll want to know. Ted's mind jumped to Andre. Before he could react, John Wick grabbed him by the hair with his right hand and smashed his head down onto the table. The impact was sudden and brutal. Ted, caught off guard by John's calm menace, went limp and was knocked out. John straightened, leaning in close. Mr. Pushkin sends his regards, traitor. The 3 burly polar bear men who had rushed in stopped a few steps short at the words, exactly as John had intended. He snatched a pen from the table, held it reversed like a stiletto, and moved. The nearest man, still dazed, was caught before he could form a defense. The pen slid into his temple. John spun, evading a wild punch from the man on his right, and drove the pen into the attacker's wrist twice, then elbowed low into the groin. As he rose, he sidestepped a kick from the third man and crashed his left foot down on the man's supporting ankle. It snapped with a sickening crunch, and the man fell. John didn't stop. He drove the pen into the fallen man's neck and stomped. The second man went limp. He stepped behind the groggy upright one and delivered a brutal kick to the back of the head, hard enough to split a shoe. The blow would leave the man a vegetable, even if it didn't kill him. When it was over, John straightened, tucking stray hair behind his ear with his unbloodied left hand. He wiped his own bloodied hand on a pocket square he took from Vigo's jacket, cleaned the pen, closed it, and placed it back into Vigo's pocket. Then he stood before Vigo, expression calm and lethal. "Keep this pen," John said quietly, "a reminder of a traitor's fate and of the money you owe my boss. If you're short by a single cent, I'll come for you. And remember the 120 Continental Hotel gold coins you owe me." "Fuck, when did I owe you 120 gold coins?" Vigo barked. "Just now," John replied with a dry smile. "Just now," John repeated, amused. "I told you owed me 120 gold coins and $30 million, and you didn't deny it. Someone paid the money for you, so you owe me the coins. No problem, right?" Vigo opened his mouth to argue, but Abram pulled him back. "No problem. I'll get you the gold coins," Abram said. John handed the check to Abram. "Cash this for me and give me the money. 15% handling fee, no problem." Abram's face twitched. 15%? Industry cuts were normally 30% or more. 15 might even be a loss. But in front of John Wick, refusal wasn't an option. He took the check and nodded grimly. 3 days. I'll deliver the coins and the cash personally." "Thank you. I like you, Abram." John went to the 3 polar bear men and searched them, finding zip ties which he used to bind Ted's hands and feet. He threw the still unconscious Ted into a chair. Finding no water, John's eyes gleamed. He slapped Ted hard across the face. Ted stirred. Another slap, harder, finally woke him. Before he could sputter a protest, John shoved the pocket square into his mouth. "I ask you answer. Understand?" John's voice was ice. Ted smirked despite the gag. He'd led a secret unit. He knew how to take pain. John hit him again, flat, unforgiving. "I ask you answer. Understand?" Silence. John slapped again. Silence. Ted's cheeks swelled and split. He realized John wasn't seeking answers so much as enjoying the control. He began to nod, but another backhand knocked his head to the side. Abram, watching from behind, flinched. "John, Ted's mouth is gagged. If you want, I can finish him," Abram said, voice tight. Killing was one thing. Torturing someone who couldn't even speak felt excessive. John met Abram's eyes, stood straight and said, "I know. Thank you." Abram blinked, surprised. "All right, carry on." John delivered one more savage slap. Blood leaked from Ted's mouth, and his face swelled grotesquely. John felt a twinge of pain in his fingers from the last strikes, flexed his hand, then paused as an incoming transmission crackled in his earpiece. "Get your men out here. 2 police cars are coming," said Sunday's voice. Vigo's curiosity flared. John's foresight had unnerved him before, but he obeyed. He called his subordinates and ordered them to stall the police. If they couldn't hold them off, they were to stage a shootout between gangs to distract officers. If that failed, shred the squad car's tires. If all else failed, surrender. Above all, the police must not get to the Empire State Building. The gang knew the drill. A few blocks away, shots rang out, followed by police sirens. Moments later, the sound of screeching tires faded as 2 patrol cars chased a Chevrolet SUV, towing farther and farther away. The sirens dwindled into the distance. With the immediate threat gone, Vigo stepped back from the building's edge and nodded at John. "It's not safe here anymore. We should go." John watched the rooftop for a moment, then looked down at the groaning Ted, bound and gagged. The night had shifted into a new, colder rhythm. The debt had been called in, and the price had been paid in blood and fear. Chapter 321, the prequel to The Chase Ends. No need. John Wick glanced at his watch, took out his phone, made a call, and then looked back at Vigo. "I've called the cleaner." "All right." As head of the Russian mob in New York, Vigo had certainly heard of cleaners, though his organization rarely needed one. John pulled a chair up to Ted, eyes fixed on him. "My boss told me a story," he said, "about a kind farmer and his wife who were murdered. There was a kindly farmer who took in an 11-year-old orphan, a troubled kid who'd been abused at the orphanage. Even though the farmer already had 3 children and was barely getting by, when he saw that child, he didn't hesitate to adopt him. He treated him like his own flesh and blood." John stood, stepped around the chair, and reached to pull the pocket square out of Ted's mouth. "Have you heard that story?" he asked. "It happened in that border town where you used to live." "Of course," Ted laughed, a cruel, manic sound. "That story's famous. Probably nobody in that town doesn't know it. What, was that farmer a relative of your boss? What a shame." "No," John said. "My boss isn't related to that respectable farmer. I'm just curious whether that farmer was a fool or a saint. Why would he keep forgiving and loving a child who fought, hurt others, blackmailed classmates, lied constantly, stole from his adoptive parents, and never helped his adoptive mother, no matter how tired she was? John fixed Ted with a stare. Your other name is Nikolai Savchenko, right? Same surname as the murdered farmer. God! The Tarasov brothers, who had been confused until then, finally understood what John implied. None of them were innocent, and their minds went to the worst possibilities. Viggo, savage as he was, ground his teeth at Ted. You executioner, may you burn in hell. He spat. Ted, his background already investigated and his hands cuffed, knew he wouldn't walk out of here alive. Since his captors wanted a story, he might as well make it as bitter as possible. Heh, he chortled. Savchenko, he really was a good man. For a while he made me feel loved. I felt a warmth and a father's care I'd never had. But that love was useless to me. He didn't know what sort of world I came from, didn't know how I survived those first 11 years. Love would only make me weak. So I was a good kid for a while, enjoying the peace and family. Then I found a... Before Ted could finish, John moved. He stepped behind him, grabbed Ted's hair with his left hand, forced his head back against the chair, looped his right arm around his neck, and tightened. With his hands cuffed behind him and his throat pressed to the chair, Ted tried to struggle, but it was futile. John's choke made his face flush and his veins stand out. My boss told me you like to send people like this, John said quietly. He asked me to do the same. I'm not only willing, I'm honored to take you to Satan myself. Since you think this world is hell, then go back to hell, scum. John wrenched with everything in his arm. There was a sickening crack. Ted's body went slack. John released him, seized him by the hair, and threw him to the floor like garbage. He stamped on Ted's face and growled, "Wait for me in hell. I'll find you there. I promise I'll kill you again." He spat, smoothed his jacket, then stopped. The sweat on Ted's skin had splashed onto his hair. Irritated, John crossed to Abram, took a pocket square from his suit, wiped his hands, folded it, and returned it to Abram's pocket. He smiled at Viggo and Abram. You two can take it from here, right? They nodded, stunned into silence. Both men felt the chill of John's final words, the promise to hunt a man down even after he was dead. They had been villains for decades, but they had never heard of anyone so relentless. A sweat of fear prickled down their backs. John inclined his head. Thank you. This should be the last time we work together on something like this. In a few days, I'll be retired. When we meet again, it won't be John Wick the killer. It'll be John Wick the head of some financial firm or whatever. I need a few days to settle in, so don't be nervous next time. Final reminder, unless someone's out to kill you, don't call me. Goodbye, Mr. Tarasov. Goodbye, John. Viggo and Abram answered, voices flat. Privately, they grumbled. Change his appearance all he wanted. He was still the assassin John Wick beneath it all. After John left the observation deck, Viggo turned to his brother. They exchanged a look, then at the 4 bodies on the floor and the gold pen clipped to a jacket pocket. Seeing the Parker gold pen, Viggo felt as if the souls of the dead were trapped in it. It made him uneasy. He snatched the pen and tossed it to Abram. It's yours. Abram slid the pen into his pocket, but not out of superstition. His thoughts were practical and darker. Viggo, shaking his head, muttered, I didn't expect John Wick to be so decisive. The moment we showed hesitation, he crushed it. No chance to pull back. What a pity. 1 million barrels of oil a week. After costs, that's 200 million a month. I get 30%, 60 million. That was my profit for an entire year. Now it's gone. Abram narrowed his eyes. Be grateful we're still useful to John Wick's boss. Otherwise, our names might be on the Night Demons list, and we'd be thrown out and trampled like Ted. I haven't had my fill of life yet, Viggo, Abram said, and Viggo understood the warning. After a beat of silence, Viggo added, Too bad John Wick is retiring. If he'd stayed, imagine if he worked for me. Abram didn't answer, thinking Viggo foolish. Even if John stayed, would he ever take orders? Keeping such a wild card would invite disaster. Abram's real concern was Pushkin. When that man died, only then would the brothers be truly safe. You should plan what to do before and after Pushkin is dealt with, and how to manage all the East Coast connections, he said. I know. Viggo agreed, but didn't intend to share details with Abram. Some secrets aren't even for brothers. Then he remembered one more thing and felt a pang. He asked, "Do you know who John Wick's boss is?" Abram's face flickered for a fraction of a second. He'd had reasons to keep that name close. A premonition told him he might one day lean toward that man. He shook it off and said evenly, "I don't know. I told you everything I knew. I mentioned meeting Mr. Winston at the Continental, but Winston was tight-lipped. He seemed wary of John Wick's boss, so I didn't press." Viggo didn't notice Abram's evasiveness, or chose not to. "We don't even know who the person is, and yet we have to hand over the leverage we cultivated for years and pay 30% annually. We're getting screwed." Abram's face hardened. "Try not paying and see if John Wick comes looking for you." Seeing the way Viggo's expression shifted, Abram added, "You haven't even taken down Pushkin, the biggest mastermind. The boss has Pushkin in New York and isn't using him yet." "What does that mean?" Viggo demanded. "It means the man behind the curtain has resources, and not just resources. They're as capable as John Wick, maybe stronger." As Abram fretted and nodded, he continued, "One John Wick already gives us a huge headache. Imagine if there were two or more." He shivered, not daring to imagine the consequences of crossing William. Viggo, hearing Abram, felt the same chill run down his spine. The thought of a group as lethal as John Wick coming for them made him tremble. Reluctantly, he acquiesced. After the cleaners finished disposing of the bodies, Viggo and Abram returned to their lair and waited, nervous and uncertain, for word that their boss Pushkin had been dealt with. Chapter 322. Time to deal with Pushkin. The next morning at 8, William woke on the yacht. He leaned over and kissed Ambrosio, still asleep, on the cheek, then went into the galley to make a simple breakfast from the leftovers. As he cooked, he listened to Sunday's report on what had transpired while he slept. He was equal parts annoyed and resigned at Viggo's vacillation, so easily swayed by money. Under those sorts of temptations, hesitation was only human. Still, William knew that as long as Viggo kept taking his money, conflict was inevitable. He hoped Viggo wouldn't change his mind during the 5-year agreement. If he did, things would get messy. Thankfully, John Wick had decisively eliminated Ted and his crew, leaving Viggo and his brother with no choice but to go all the way. That incident convinced William that dealing with Pushkin could no longer be postponed. Too many unpredictable variables could interfere. He told Sunday, "Tell McCall to move as soon as he's ready. No delays. Anything could go wrong." "Understood, sir. The order has been sent," Sunday replied, then added, "While you were resting last night, I finished compiling all available information on East European polar bear gang members at the sub-boss level and above. Shall I forward it to Mr. Gary's Mallory in London now?" "Yes, send it," William said. "I don't want to be a gang boss myself. There's no point hoarding this. Use it." "The data has been sent. The password is Mr. Mallory's birthday." William chuckled and texted Mallory with a single message, "Your birthday." After breakfast, he went back to the bedroom to wake Ambrosio. The two of them spent the morning on the yacht's third deck, talking quietly and enjoying the view. Around noon, Ambrosio went below to prepare lunch. William stayed on the fishing platform, alone, listening through his earpiece as Sunday relayed more updates. "Sir," Mr. Gary's Mallory replied, "he accepts your terms. You may now send someone to inspect that batch of Chinese antiques." William laughed softly. "It seems many of the young, outwardly glamorous nobles lack real ability. It forces those old men, nearly meeting their maker, into these seedy deals." In this age, a noble without money was little more than a pensioner with a title. If the antiques proved valuable, William would have to cut a deal, perhaps hand the Faraday Group matter over to Duke Devon and his people for a quick return while William secured the longer-term gains. No yacht company, no matter how competent, could realistically multiply its value tenfold or 100-fold overnight. He wondered whether their heirs would curse their fathers in later years for squandering the chance. "Notify Abigail," he told Sunday. "They get 1 day to rest, then start immediately. Compile the authenticity and valuation report on those antiques and send it to me. If they're genuinely valuable, we'll need to negotiate." "Message sent, sir. I agree with your assessment," Sunday answered. "Ha ha, Sunday. You're getting cheekier. I like it." "Thank you," the AI replied. They had lunch, rested for an hour, then at 2 o'clock changed into swimsuits and swam off the yacht for an hour. Ambrosio, after 4 high-intensity sessions in a day, felt equal parts adoration and exhaustion and declared a truce for the evening. They stayed at sea for 3 days, fishing, diving, training, settling into a comfortable routine. Early on the 4th day, as William was waking, Sunday reported that McCall and Antonov in Moscow had completed their preparations to take down Pushkin. "Have the equipment been delivered?" William asked. "Delivered to Mr. Antonov last night," Sunday said. "The equipment is highly secure. Once activated, if an operative moves more than 1 meter away for 10 seconds, or if the signal is lost, it will self-destruct." "Good. I hope everyone in the operation can pass the test," William said. "When does it start? Are Antonov's family and the others safely out of polar bear territory?" "The operation begins in 1 hour, 4 p.m. Moscow time, when Pushkin returns from hunting and the manor's defenses are weakest. As for the families, because of the delay, they left Moscow 2 days ago and flew to Belarus yesterday. They should arrive in Estonia this afternoon, change vehicles, and reach the Polish-German border by 11 p.m. From there, someone will meet them and take them to a resort in the Iron Cross Mountains in Switzerland to await Antonov and his team. There will be no safety issues." "Excellent. Remind me when the operation starts." "Understood, sir." After a brief breakfast with Ambrosio, William kissed her and excused himself. The yacht's onboard transmissions were unreliable, pictures and signals could cut in and out, so he opened the portal back to the Oxford basement. The castle's equipment was far superior to the yacht's. Better bandwidth and stability were essential for overseeing something this delicate. Sitting in a leather recliner in the basement, he ordered, "Begin." "Yes, sir." Images filled more than a dozen monitors. Antonov and McCall appeared on the screens. Antonov smiled broadly. "Good morning, boss." "Good morning, Mr. Devonshire," McCall added. "It's about 4 where you are, so let me say good afternoon," William replied. They could sense the tension in him and relaxed a little. Antonov's English had improved. He even used an Oxford cadence. "Antonov, it sounds like you've been studying since we last met. Your accent is very good. Have you always wanted to work for me?" "Thank you, boss," Antonov said, clearly pleased. Seeing his family's situation after returning to Moscow had pushed him toward prospects with wealthy patrons. Working for William was the best outcome, so perhaps it was natural he'd hired an Oxford accent tutor while learning English. William glanced at a monitor and kept the video feed open. "Time's almost up. Good luck." "Understood, boss." When the call ended, William turned to Sunday. "How are the devices we ordered performing?" "No issues so far," Sunday replied. "But the fully automated production equipment is still small scale and can only output low-strength materials. The upgraded main server can now support 2 Mark armors simultaneously in terms of computing power. To enable fully autonomous control of the armor, the server will still need another upgrade." Chapter 323, Optical Camouflage Combat Suit. William let out an exasperated laugh. "I'd go mad if I upgraded you again right now. The money I've plowed into this is the biggest expense the Devonshire family has seen. That upgrade alone cost $50 million. With the first server I bought, that makes $80 million in total. You are the family's crown jewel. My mother and I haven't spent that much between us in months. In less than half a year, that $80 million will be worth $60. If it's worth $40 million a year from now, I'll count myself lucky. For now, it's enough to run 2 systems for me and my mother. Besides, there's no more space in the castle basement. If you want another upgrade, you'll be on a very long waiting list." He looked at the monitors, thinking of the armor's potential, optical camouflage, speed of computation, autonomous systems, and the staggering costs of pushing the technology to the next level. The machinery and servers were expensive, but so was patience. For now, the preparations were set. The operation would begin on schedule, and William reminded himself to trust the men on his screens. "But, sir, you have to plan for emergencies. If you and Mrs. Lena both use it at once, my computing power can only support 2 Mark suits, and I won't be able to handle other monitoring tasks. And according to your schedule, I estimate Mark V will be finished in less than 2 months. At that point, we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. The first few Marks were just experiments. Mark V is only to keep my mother safe. You can control one marked suit perfectly fine now. As for me, hey, if I can't win, can't I at least run? All right, sir, you really are very Lena. Sunday's sudden, oddly specific compliment left William puzzled. What do you mean? You're so much like Mrs. Lena, just as calculating. I'm paying you a compliment, sir. Damn you, Sunday, William muttered, then laughed. What's my mother done now? Mrs. Lena was very unhappy about your decision to raise wages for the ranch, farm, and stable workers. She not only vetoed it, she unilaterally cut their pay by 10%. Her argument was that with the global financial crisis, the Devonshires haven't laid anyone off and have even created jobs, so we should tighten the purse strings. Humph. William didn't object. He nodded in approval. My old lady really knows how to run a household. But, sir, I must warn you, you promised to raise wages in front of Mr. Neil Jordan, the head horse trainer. If you don't honor it, it will hurt your reputation. Besides, the savings are only £110,000, not even enough for one of your sea trips. What can I do? Argue with my mother, William shrugged. You don't understand how people think. If we make conditions too generous in hard times, who knows how entitled they'll get later. Fine, tell me, have all the marked components shipped back? How long until I can get into it? All components should arrive in 4 days, sir. Assembly will take 3 days. So in a week, I can start testing the Mark III? William asked, excited. Yes, sir. He grinned at the thought of flying and diving into the sea in a few days. 10 minutes later, Sunday's voice came back over the feed. Sir, the action team is suited up and the equipment programs are active. Operation is about to begin. William leaned toward the monitor. 5 faint figures moved across the image, so faint most people would have missed them. He still noticed minor flaws. If you look closely, there are artifacts. Is this a materials problem? No, sir. The materials and formulas are fine. The issue is my assembly equipment. The castle's basement is too cramped and many devices can't be used. Will that affect the mission? My calculations say the probability of discovery under normal conditions is 17%. However, the Antonov team is approaching from the west side of the manor. The 4 o'clock sun works in our favor and will reduce the chance of detection for the people outside to about 4%, provided they don't run. That's why Mr. McCall chose this time. The manor's surveillance has been brought under my control. Good. Old man McCall knows when to seize an opportunity. Soon the 5 operatives pulled open car doors, stepped out, and dispersed. They moved toward Pushkin's manor at half a normal walking pace. It took 10 minutes for them to reach the grounds. Once inside, using trees, hedges, and ornaments for cover, they picked up speed under Sunday's guidance. They ignored the guards patrolling the perimeter. The plan was simple: no action unless they saw Pushkin. Ideally, he would be taken without a sound. With Sunday's monitoring, after another dozen minutes, they reached the main villa without raising an alarm. They entered the house and climbed the split staircase to the second floor, where 4 large indoor trees stood as part of the decoration. Antonov spoke softly into his earpiece. Ivan, Valentin, Yakov, hold the staircase here. Keep watch. Understood, boss. The 3 melted behind the indoor foliage, concealed yet with a broad view. From there, they could see the hallway and the downstairs foyer. With Sunday controlling the manor's cameras, Antonov and McCall moved through the second floor, avoiding servants and patrolling bodyguards. At Pushkin's door, McCall peered around the corner, half his head exposed, and watched the 2 burly guards outside. He pulled back and tried to make a silent combat gesture, then realized he couldn't while wearing his optical stealth suit. The suit hampered his movements. Muttering about high-tech inconveniences, he whispered into his earpiece, 2 guards at the door. Looks like we'll have to use force. Understood, Antonov replied. He trusted his teammates, and McCall was mission leader. I'll take cover on the corner. You move into a firing position with the stealth suit. Watch your angles. Don't let any penetrating rounds hit the door and alert Pushkin. If we're spotted, open fire immediately. If not, we fire together. I'll take the one on the right. You take the left. No problem. Antonov checked the silenced pistol strapped to his right leg, eased it back into the holster, inhaled slowly, and began to edge from the corner. He stuck his head out, paused, saw no reaction from the 2 guards, and continued in small, calculated steps. Perhaps a long afternoon's hunting had dulled their vigilance, Perhaps they felt safe by the main door. Either way, they were distracted. A minute later, Antonov was in position. Neither guard had reacted. He signaled, 1, 2, 3, 2 soft pops. Whoosh, whoosh, and the guards slumped, bullets through the skull, no chance to cry out. The drops of sound that followed were muted by the luxury of the villa. The main door's soundproofing helped ensure no alarm. Antonov and McCall moved to the door. "Time's short," Antonov said. "I'll deal with these two. You go get Pushkin." McCall nodded low. He knew the clock was against them. Blood would be hard to fully clean, even if Antonov disposed of the bodies, and they could be discovered if they dawdled. He pulled the door open and stepped into Pushkin's suite. The room was empty at first. McCall swept through the living room and found the bedroom-bathroom. Pushkin was in the shower, visible behind the glass. McCall exhaled. Relief flickered across his face. Watching through the operative's glasses, William felt a brief, pragmatic hope that they might bring Pushkin back alive. Capturing him could yield secrets and leverage. The thought lasted only seconds. Getting entangled with Polar Bear Country would be trouble. He'd already drawn CIA attention over the National Treasure incident, provoking the Polar Bear's intelligence services. What he mentally called the KGB would make things messy. Better to let the team do what they'd come to do. Quietly, McCall picked up a remote, closed the windows, lowered the curtains, and switched out the lights. "Guards!" Pushkin's voice called, sharp and alert. He'd noticed something and yelled for help, but no one answered. Cautious, he opened the shower's glass door and glanced around. Nothing seemed amiss. He reached for the pistol on the stool and froze. His gun was gone. Panic spiked. The realization hit him before he could turn. Someone had been in the room. He felt a chill at his back. Before he could react, pain flared in his neck. A hand clamped over his mouth. A heavy blow thudded into his side. McCall had struck him in the kidney, smothered his cries with one hand, and with the other produced a syringe, plunging it into Pushkin's neck. Struggles faded. Within seconds, Pushkin weakened, his panic blurring into fog. He saw, out of the corner of his vision, a blurry figure approach, seize his arm, and drag him toward the bedroom. He was thrown onto the bed, bound hand and foot, and a blanket was pulled over him. His breaths grew shallow and slow as the sedative took hold. His eyes, already clouded with fear, dimmed until he could only stare at the ceiling. Outside the room, Antonov was tidying up the two bodies with desultory efficiency. The operation had gone according to plan, fast, silent, and clinical. Chapter 325, Return to New York. Beep, beep. The ringtone cut through the quiet of the bedroom. Click. Someone placed a phone on the bedside table. Pushkin, still wondering why he hadn't been killed, barely had time to register anything before he saw the thing he least wanted to see, a bottle labeled Truth Serum in Russian. A blurred figure drew a full syringe from the bottle and plunged it into the back of his neck. When it was done, McCall methodically checked the paths he'd taken, wiped away footprints from the bathroom, glanced once at Pushkin, now starting to babble incoherently on the bed, and closed the door behind him. "What's going on?" William asked Sunday, puzzled. "Sir," Sunday replied, "McCall and Antonov planned several contingencies for this op. The ideal outcome was to enter Pushkin's room without killing anyone, and, with the truth serum Antonov brought from his time in Special Forces, force Pushkin to reveal his secret accounts outside of the Polar Bear Bank. So the drug makes him tell the truth, but it can also kill him?" William's voice was flat. He already suspected the answer. "Yes, sir. The truth serum isn't reliably effective, but a large enough dose can cause heart failure, death, in under 10 minutes. All right, try it. If we can get at his secret accounts, that could be unexpected wealth." William's tone turned businesslike. "Begin." Sunday started the interrogation through the phone left on the bedside table. For the first few minutes, a confused but coherent Pushkin spoke. After 5 minutes, his speech deteriorated into a feverish jumble. By 10 minutes, he was silent. William listened with his eyes closed. "Any results?" he asked finally. "Sir, I recovered 2 accounts. I fully verified one, less than $200 million US. The other looks like his main account, but the credentials are incomplete, likely due to subconscious concealment. I'm sorry." William let out a short laugh. "No expectation, no disappointment. I'm almost certain the $200 million account is a trap. Anyone who uses it will be targeted. You didn't leave any trace when you verified it, did you? He asked. No, sir. I used the estate's network for verification. If anyone investigates, they'll assume there's an insider in the estate. Good. William watched the feed as McCall and the others cleared the property. They piled into a car and drove about 20 minutes to a clearing by a river. Take off all your gear, McCall ordered as he parked. The 5 men obeyed, stacking their equipment and swapping into ordinary clothes. Antonov, last out of the car, activated a timer attached to 3 incendiary devices, tossed them onto the gear pile, and said, 1 minute. Everything in the car will burn clean. They moved to a waiting fishing boat. As the engine started, 3 bangs sounded. Flames roared up where the car had been parked. 10 minutes on the water later, they disembarked. Antonov bored several finger-sized holes in the boat's hull, shoved it back into the river, and let it drift. It would sink within minutes. Then they split up. McCall would change cars several times, fly to Paris, drive to London, and wait there for Antonov and the others before they all proceeded to Oxford. Antonov's group would take different routes, different cars, different flights, then transfer to Switzerland. If all went to plan, they would each be with their families in a few days. William issued one last order. Monitor McCall and Antonov's group of 5 closely. I want to know if any of them betray us or head to the castle town with some special mission. Understood, sir. I'll keep constant watch on all 5. Satisfied, William opened a portal and stepped back onto his yacht in New York. He stretched and left his office to find Ambrosio lounging on the sofa in the cockpit, enjoying the sea breeze and a magazine. My dear, are you done already? She asked, surprised. It hasn't even been an hour. Is that how super rich people work? They ignore things for days, then spend an hour fixing everything. William smiled and sat beside her. I don't run a corporation, so I'm normally not busy. I only get involved when there's a new project or invention. Like when you made Sunday? Ambrosio curled up and rested her head on his chest. More or less. Creating Sunday wasn't that hard. He said it offhandedly. She kissed him, delighted. What about traveling? She said, eager to change the subject. I want to come with you. You scoundrel, she teased, tapping his chest. I studied too, you know. A bachelor's degree just like you. Don't look down on me. If you don't want to come, say so, and I'll sail alone. William grinned. Ambrosio hesitated. But what about my intensive training? Wouldn't I get special treatment on my first time? That'd be bad. William waved a hand. What's the worst that could happen? If it's necessary, I'll just buy this year's Victoria's Secret fantasy bra, and you'll get whatever special privileges you need. Are you serious? Her eyes lit up. Give it to me? I'll think about it. He chuckled, playing it cool. She pretended to sob. He shook his head and softened. Given how well you've done lately, I wouldn't rule it out. That's more like it. If you gave it to someone else, I'd bite you to death, she said, baring perfectly white teeth. Everyone would know I'm your woman. If you gave away something so priceless, New York would laugh at me. No, the whole world would laugh. My mother is the person I love most, William said suddenly, deadpan. Ambrosio burst into laughter through her tears. Wiping her face, he added, After her, you're the closest woman to me. You too, she murmured, looking at him tenderly. He kissed her on the cheek. Enough. Are you coming or not? Of course, my dear. If I can get time off, I'll go. She rubbed his arm. Let's go home and prepare. The boat needs maintenance, and I want to paint my name on it before we leave. You say all that, but I know the painting is the real reason, William said, smiling. He rose to the helm and steered the yacht toward the yacht club. 2 hours later, Martin Donner, waiting at the dock, greeted them with a fawning smile. Good morning, Mr. Devonshire. Miss Ambrosio. Good morning, Martin. How have you been? William asked, shaking his hand. Martin's face stiffened. He fumbled for words. The New York tax authorities had been making things difficult for him the past few days, and it showed. All right. Just kidding, William said, clapping Martin on the shoulder. Help me get everything ready for my sea trip. I'll be sailing in a few days. And help Miss Ambrosio paint her name on the bow. From now on, this yacht will be called the Ambrosio. Yes, sir. I promise I'll take care of it perfectly, Martin replied, delighted not only by the business, but by the chance to curry favor with his future boss. He turned to Ambrosio. Miss Ambrosio, the moment your name goes on that yacht, you'll be New York's first female superyacht owner. Women everywhere will be jealous. Thank you, she beamed at the flattering words. She handed Martin a sheet with a pre-selected typeface. This is the font I want. You only have a few days. Will that be enough? Of course. I guarantee you'll see your name on that yacht before you set sail, Martin said without hesitation. Good. I'll see you later, Martin. Goodbye, Mr. Devonshire. Miss Ambrosio, Martin said respectfully as he watched William and Ambrosio get into their car. Only after the car drove away did he pump a silent fist and head back to the office to assign tasks. Back at their Upper East Side home overlooking Central Park, Ambrosio dragged William to inspect the clothes he'd bought her over the past few days. Seeing a closet full of pieces in her size, William couldn't help but praise her. She held out a hand, mock-offended. I've spent so much on clothes for you that I hardly have anything left for myself. Now it's your turn to buy things for me, dear. Given how well you've behaved, no problem. William checked his watch. It's past 11. Let's order something to eat, then nap, and I'll go shopping with you. No, let's eat on Fifth Avenue. After dinner, I want to shop all afternoon and evening and buy everything I've had on my list, she urged, tugging his sleeve. Come on, there's not much time today. Hearing all afternoon and all evening, William broke into a cold sweat and shook his head. I would be insane to shop with you that long. If you want, call the stores and have them deliver pieces here so you can choose. He collapsed onto the bed. I'd rather sleep at home than spend the whole afternoon in boutiques. No, she protested, trying to pull him up. When he wouldn't move, she lay on his back and whispered, If you promise to shop with me for a day, I'll agree to anything you want. No. Chapter 326. Do you really think I'm a country bumpkin? Despite his refusal, Ambrosio used a few persuasive fitness poses and had him surrender in under an hour. After their little skirmish, William was ready to go, but Ambrosio, despite winning, was worn out. They ordered takeout, ate, and slept until mid-afternoon. Refreshed, William changed, took his girlfriend out, and they soon reached Fifth Avenue, only to be trailed by paparazzi who had already sniffed them out. William glanced at his beaming companion and inwardly grumbled. He knew she had brought him out for moments like this. He maintained a cool, mildly irritated expression as Ambrosio clung to his arm and posed for cameras. They shopped all afternoon, had dinner, and then William brought her home. Over the next 2 days, William managed only one more outing, a visit to Victoria's Secret headquarters, during which he had seemed perfectly cheerful going in, but noticeably displeased coming out. Ambrosio, clinging to his arm, looked delighted. The contrast thrilled the tabloids. Paparazzi and gossip outlets turned their attention fully to the couple. A swarm followed them around the clock. Even with a dozen temporary bodyguards, William couldn't shake the press. Cameras would swarm the moment he appeared. At night, more than a dozen paparazzi cars waited outside their building. The press was tenacious and resourceful. Within a day, a television report about Ambrosio aired, and the media coverage spread far beyond New York. News networks in Europe and America dissected the story. William's extravagant lifestyle, the Riva 50T yacht, reported to cost more than $18 million, gifted to a girlfriend he dated only half a year. Ambrosio, a model still not yet 20, suddenly shot to fame as the first woman to own a superyacht. Crew members who'd seen the Riva 50T added fuel to the frenzy, reporting that the couple had spent 4 full days off New York on its maiden voyage. Many New Yorkers interviewed on the street criticized William's conspicuous consumption. In a struggling economy, public resentment bubbled. William didn't much care, but Ambrosio, still a model, couldn't bear the backlash. She felt compelled to go on camera and explain she wasn't the yacht's owner, only the namesake because she was William's girlfriend. That clarification only delighted the media further. Paparazzi pounced with increasingly invasive questions, which unsettled Ambrosio and began to irritate William. Then the story escalated. Either from jealousy or deliberate hype, someone at Victoria's Secret leaked that William had purchased this year's $1 million fantasy bra. Designers were supposedly modifying it to Ambrosio's measurements, and rumors spread that the $15 million ruby and diamond piece might be collected privately rather than shown on the runway. Headlines ran wild. Some outlets even offered six-figure sums for photos. Ambrosio was thrilled and terrified at once. William, however, took immediate action. The next morning, a legal team of 5 lawyers arrived at Victoria's Secret. The company issued a public apology and, offering to placate William, said it would buy the fantasy bra back for $17 million and promised Ambrosio the honor of wearing the wings the first time she appeared in the show. Did Victoria's Secret genuinely think William couldn't afford it? Did they take him for a country bumpkin? Amused and exasperated, William made a few phone calls. Then, looking at his anxious girlfriend, he gave an order to his aide, Sunday. Sunday, you're in charge of real-time news and operational guidance. I want every step faster than anyone else in the market. At the same time, gather any negative reports on L brands. If you don't get a result in 3 days, release what we've collected. Understood, sir. As he finished the call, Ambrosio began to speak, but William cut her off sharply. The suddenness of his "shut up" brought tears to her eyes. Darling, I just wanted to say I'll support whatever you decide, she murmured after a moment. If you don't want me to model for Victoria's Secret, I can work elsewhere. You matter to me most. William studied her for a moment, surprised to find she wasn't posturing. He softened, sat beside her, and wrapped an arm around her. Don't worry, I promise. After this, Victoria's Secret will not only invite you to walk the show, they'll treat you like royalty. She rested her head against him silently, comforted. The media, who had been waiting for William to respond, got their answer in the markets. When trading opened that morning, L Brand's stock behaved like a roller coaster, wildly volatile. By the close of the day, it had dropped about $11 per share. Market watchers began to realize something alarming. William's available capital might exceed L Brand's value many times over. Given L Brand's market position, William could probably mobilize more than $5 billion in cash. Panic spread. The stock tumbled further, shedding nearly $27 in following sessions and costing investors tens of millions. Traders readied themselves to short L Brands. That evening, the company's chairman and CEO personally drove to the Upper East Side to talk to William. They stayed more than 3 hours. At 10 o'clock, William, smiling, hand in hand with Ambrosio, escorted the somewhat awkward executives to their car. The press and public buzzed with curiosity, but more than 30 burly men in black suits with earpieces stood guard at William's private elevator. No interviews were possible. No one could get within 20 meters. Chapter 3-27, Plans Disrupted. The next morning, the waiting media finally had something concrete to report. Before the market opened, L Brands filed paperwork disclosing a change in equity. William Devonshire had injected $1.1 billion into the company and acquired a 5% stake, valuing L Brands at $2.2 billion, about $200 million higher than its value 3 days earlier. The filing confirmed what markets and journalists had been speculating about. William was no bluff, and his moves could reshape the narrative around the company. Chapter 328, The Devonshire Family Foundation. As soon as the memorandum was made public, Brandell's market value, which had been sliding for 3 days, rebounded sharply. By that morning, it had recovered to roughly $2 billion, and by the afternoon close it had climbed to nearly $2.1 billion. Many traders who had shorted Brandell after the market opened at 9 a.m. suffered heavy losses. The next day, the uproar spilled into the press, calls for investigations, accusations that William had illegally manipulated the stock. But after receiving a memo from the Swiss National Bank, U.S. market regulators investigated for a few days and then fell silent. The trades that had driven the rebound were executed with funds ostensibly belonging to the Swiss National Bank, and on paper, they had nothing to do with William. Apart from a verbal expression of interest from a fund of more than $4 billion that briefly contacted several brokerages about acquiring Brandell, nothing further materialized. William's money had never entered the market. The Swiss National Bank had stepped in because, when its president John Gries took William's call, he had heard William say plainly, "If you make a profit, it's the bank's. If you lose, the bank will be compensated elsewhere." John Gries, unsurprisingly, did not turn down such a risk-free proposition. He had already watched William make enormous gains back in March and trusted his judgment. In Jean Gries's office, he excitedly reviewed the operation records Felix, William's dedicated client manager at the bank, had prepared. "We made $60 million in 3 days? How did you do it? Show me the operation logs," Gene demanded. Felix handed over the documents. Gene read them, then sat back in his chair, shaking his head. "Has your team gotten that good at sensing fund flows? Why were every one of your operations faster than the rest of the market?" Felix looked embarrassed. "Sir, it's not that our team is that brilliant. It's Mr. William DeVenture's judgment. He can issue instructions a second or two before everyone else. It makes our trades, which look extremely risky, effectively risk-free." Felix took the operation records back from Gene, walked over to the shredder, and fed the papers in. One by one, a dozen reports disappeared into the blades. Still uneasy, he emptied the shredded strips back into the feed and ran them through again until nothing remained but dust. When Gene raised an eyebrow, Felix explained, "Mr. DeVenture's people destroyed the transaction server's motherboard right in front of me. I only had these records because I pleaded my case to Mr. DeVenture. You must have seen his bodyguards in the VIP lounge. If this leaked, I don't know what would happen to me. I'm sorry, Mr. Grease." Gene Grease felt helpless. He knew he could not scold Felix. The banker's official salary was only 240,000 Swiss francs, but since following William, he had bought an estate of over 110 acres in Switzerland and invested, with his 10 traders, in a luxury resort on Iron Cross Mountain. Rumor had it the resort's idea, a Chinese-style theme, came from William, that William's bodyguards were among the resort's shareholders, and that total investment exceeded 100 million Swiss francs. In the current climate, whoever could lead you to profit was effectively the boss. John Grease waved it away, leaned back in his chair, and said, "All right, sit. Tell me more about that resort you invested in." "Of course, Mr. Grease," Felix said with a smile and sat down, unconcerned. 22 shareholders already meant one more made little difference. Those days of waiting for the investigation passed uneasily. William's mother, Lena, called with one terse sentence. The Earl of Oxford was dying. Lena wanted William to be prepared, and if possible, to use the branch's influence as leverage to ensure the succession of the title. She warned him sharply that if he failed to secure the title for their branch, she would never forgive him, and she even ordered him not to return to the castle if he failed. Lena's words disrupted William's plans. He could not ignore her. He shelved his secret acquisition strategy for Brandel, reassured his mother, and set his legal team to work negotiating with Brandel's lawyers while he publicly considered how best to demonstrate the branch's strength. 3 days later, William and Brandel, with the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission watching, signed an agreement. William acquired a 5% stake and was appointed an independent director on the company's board. The old chairman of Brandel had resisted every pressure to yield more. He would rather go down fighting than hand control to William, and so the chairman reluctantly agreed to the 5% stake, but only the nominal role of independent director, afraid William might use financial leverage to seize the company he'd built. For William, the 5% stake was an entry ticket. The contract contained no clause banning further market purchases. Once on the board, he could quietly approach directors, arrange share exchanges, or slowly buy shares on the open market. But with the peerage issue pressing, he had to put aggressive maneuvers on hold. At the signing press conference, he put on a conciliatory face and left a favorable impression, then surprised everyone with a provocative aside. "The reason I invested in Brandel is because I'm optimistic about the company," he told the assembled reporters. "If the chairman had been willing to step back, I would have bought the whole thing and let him manage it. But a company I can't control doesn't interest me. Besides, this investment is nothing compared to what I made in 2 days." The hall erupted. Reporters shouted, gasped, and cursed. Ambrosio, seated among the guests, covered her mouth and stared at William with astonishment. Even knowing William's fortune exceeded $20 billion, hearing he'd made over $1.1 billion in 2 days stunned everyone. The chairman beside William stared in horror. If William could guarantee Brandel earned $1 billion a year, the company's market value could skyrocket, and the chairman could be displaced by other shareholders. He suddenly felt he had invited a devil into his company. William smiled. amused at the chairman's reaction, tapped the microphone and addressed the crowd. Although Brandel's current scale doesn't personally excite me, I do think the company's prospects are very good. If you trust my judgment, those interested should consider buying in. Done. I'll buy. The reporter's excitement was infectious. William's trading record had convinced them. Thank you. I promise you won't regret it in a few years, he added, smiling. Then, as the room settled, William leaned into a lighter tone. I'd originally thought of giving these shares to a girl I love, but after seeing your reactions, I changed my mind. Exactly. If you'd done that, she'd have been torn to shreds by the press, someone called out. Others laughed knowingly. Ambrosio rolled her eyes. She knew perfectly well William would never hand her shares. He was deflecting gossip and sweetening public opinion. The real reason he wouldn't give the shares away was practical. He didn't consider his relationship with Ambrosio that deep. She wasn't his wife or the mother of his children. Bestowing shares of that size would invite ridicule later if the shares surged in value. He also disliked the idea of gifting tens of millions to the U.S. taxman. Gift taxes were almost as harsh as inheritance tax. Frankly, I'd rather buy clothes and jewelry for my girlfriend than hand over tens of millions to the IRS, he quipped. The comment drew appreciative laughter and some grumbles about taxes. William continued, Besides, with that money, I'd rather do some real charity. That drew a hush. Everyone knew the main announcement was coming. The second thing I want to announce is the establishment of the Devonshire Family Foundation. After the murmur died down, William explained, I come from a single-parent family. The foundation's charitable mission will focus solely on single-parent families, those who, for various reasons, are raising children alone. A middle-aged reporter with a full beard rose, hand up, eager. Mr. Devonshire, pardon the interruption. I'm a single father raising 3 children. Will your foundation include single fathers like me? William hesitated, surprised. To be honest, I hadn't really thought about male single-parent households. At first, I worried offering help might feel like an insult to them. Do you understand what I mean? The reporter bristled. No. Men and women are equal. Raising children isn't gendered. Why wouldn't your foundation help men like me? William paused, then asked, How old are your children? My wife died 3 years ago, the reporter said. When she passed, the youngest was 2, the middle was 5, and the oldest was 7. Chapter 329. A trap only an idiot would fall for. As the middle-aged man spoke, William pulled out his phone and tapped the screen a few times, instructing Sunday to run a quick check on him and his children. All right, that's enough, William said, interrupting the man and rattling his phone for emphasis. Do you mind if I show everyone your family's current situation on the screen behind me? The man blinked in confusion. Okay, let's see if what you're saying is true. Sunday, begin. Yes, sir. A deep, rich voice answered through the conference hall's speakers. To everyone's astonishment, the projector automatically powered up and a photo filled the screen. It showed 2 young boys and a preteen girl by a river, the kind of picture taken on a modest family outing. They smiled warmly, but their food was simple, sandwiches and homemade fruit juice, and their clothes were plain. One after another, the projector displayed publicly available posts, community event photos, school records, and even Dario's salary information. At first, the audience felt a soft sympathy for Dario's family, but when his yearly income, $240,000, appeared, many frowns replaced the smiles. That amount made raising 3 children difficult, but it wasn't poverty. Some muttered that the man was shameless to request welfare. Others suspected he might be trying to swindle money by playing the pity card. None of them expected William to pull up everything so quickly. Then Sunday showed another detail, a record indicating that 1 year after his wife's death, Dario had taken responsibility for his father-in-law, who suffered from Alzheimer's and lived in a care home. The mood in the room shifted. The bearded, partially balding middle-aged man standing in the center now looked respectable, tired, certainly, but honorable. The audience's earlier suspicion faded into respect. William switched the projector off and tapped his microphone to draw everyone's attention. I have one question. How did you get in? I don't see your name on the guest list. Immediately, people around Dario backed away, and the dozen bodyguards clustered around William sent 4 men forward to intercept him. Then William rapped the microphone 3 times. "Quiet. Don't worry. Mr. Dario is not a threat." The 4 men paused, glanced at William, and after a nod from him, fell back to the podium. 2 of them still stayed near Ambrosio, escorting him to stand behind William. Despite William's assurance, several of the bodyguards had their hands inside their jackets, ready to draw if necessary. Their contract with William was strict. If anything happened to him, their employer would owe $100 million. Though that sum wouldn't dissolve the company, it would be ruinous. On the other hand, the operation paid exceptionally well if nothing went wrong. Each of the 32 bodyguards earned $10,000 a day, plus a 50% bonus and a $2 million fee for their firm. Since taking the job, they treated William like a near-divine figure. No one was allowed within 20 meters of him without his say-so. "All right, no need to be nervous," William said calmly. "Remember the 2 security checks you passed to get in. You weren't carrying anything dangerous." "That's right," the group murmured. The conference's security was as tight as a government facility. Once everyone relaxed, William shrugged, half joking. "Judging by how you reacted, I should avoid crowded places in the US in the future. I don't think I could go out without dozens of bodyguards. Does your president, Mr. Benjamin Arthur, have to travel with an entire company of soldiers?" "No, William. A single company wouldn't be enough." The chairman of the L brand, seated beside William, replied wryly. "After the White House breach, the troops out front now number 3,000. Those armchair generals are wasting taxpayer money." His hearty laugh eased the room's tension. All eyes returned to Dario, who stood in the spotlight and suddenly looked uneasy under so many stares. He cleared his throat. "All right, I'll explain. To have more time for my children, I switched from sports journalism to tabloid reporting. Yesterday after 3, I sneaked into the ceiling ventilation shaft of this conference room hoping to get some special photos. Luckily, you got them? You actually got them?" Several voices broke in. A few reporters openly gushed. "Dario, you're my hero. You actually say you took private photos of William Devonshire. Aren't you afraid of getting ambushed?" "Ambushes be damned. Hand over the photos." William tapped the microphone and spoke with a cold, steady calm. He had been on edge since his mother warned him the Earl of Oxford was near death, and his eyes scanned the room as he continued. "Being ambushed is amateur hour. If someone secretly photographs me, I guarantee that for the next few decades, their life will revolve around 4 things: eating, sleeping, working, and suing me. I'll hire people to watch them 24 hours a day. Their parents, their wives, even their adult children. If any of them do anything remotely immoral or illegal, not only will the police know, but the press will make it public. So don't provoke someone who can earn tens of millions a day. The amount you'd need to defend yourself in lawsuits and countersuits might not equal what I make in a single day. If I'm generous, I might even spend a few days' earnings to help those who dislike your paper sue you. Now that would be a spectacle." The threat landed like a bucket of ice water. Reporters felt their scalps prickle. If William really cared so little about money and spent millions to fund lawsuits, any publication could be mired in litigation for years, perhaps even driven to bankruptcy. The hall fell silent. No one dared step out of line. "So, Mr. Dario," William went on, "tell me what you photographed, if anything. If you didn't take any, no trouble. If you did, do you want to give me the photos, or shall I buy them?" Before Dario could answer, a striking woman not far from him suddenly stood and spoke. "Mr. Dario, perhaps we could discuss this privately." "Who is she? Is she out of her mind?" someone hissed. "She's a field reporter for the Valentine Daily, the Richmond Valentine Company," another said. "Valentine Daily? That new online outlet?" "Yeah, online media," someone added with thinly veiled disdain. The phrase online media set many reporters' teeth on edge. Several, poised to intervene, found themselves silenced, eyeing the young woman with contempt. Being the center of attention pleased her. She beamed and addressed William directly. "Hello, Mr. Devonshire." Chapter 330. If the boss has no brains, don't expect much from the subordinates. On impulse, she'd walked into a trap, never expecting anyone to fall for it, just as William was about to assume a title. He cut her off cold. "Stop. I don't care who you are. To me, you're not much different from a stray cat. If you're trying to extort me with gossip, you've got the wrong idea." He tapped his ear. Sunday's voice fed him background on Richmond Valentine. William tapped a steady rhythm on the table, staring at the image of the company's logo on his phone. The reporter's cheerful face made him think of a repulsive movie villain, and his smile hardened into a predator's stare. "Tell me, what does Richmond Valentine want you to do?" he asked. Being dismissed so brusquely angered the beautiful reporter, who had spent her career craving the spotlight. But William's cold, implacable gaze shook her confidence. Still, she drew on the backing of her boss. "My boss, Mr. Richmond Valentine, wants to meet with you to discuss something." William smiled meaningfully and narrowed his eyes. "Good. I never expected a spontaneous move to hook such a big fish. You'll be famous soon, Miss Reporter. Every journalist in New York will remember this foolish stunt." She bristled, then faltered when she realized William wasn't bluffing. "Please tell Mr. Richmond Valentine that if he wants to see you, he should come in person. My time is precious. I won't waste it on insignificant people." Oh my God. William Devonshire actually despises Richmond Valentine. "This is going to be good," some around them whispered, delighted. The woman's face drained. She'd acted rashly, and now her boss might be embarrassed. Desperate, she turned to Dario and tried for a scandal to save face. "Mr. Dario, be a gentleman. It's rude to leave a lady waiting." The other reporters erupted in laughter. No one expected someone to fall for such an obvious ploy. Their amusement was cruel and loud. They mocked the Valentine reporter for her obvious lack of judgment. Only William knew this wasn't just a stupid subordinate. It was a symptom of Richmond Valentine's poor leadership. He thought of Richmond Valentine as another emotionally tone-deaf tech bro, ambitious, careless, and dangerous in his own delusions. Dario shrugged and spoke mildly. "I'm sorry, ma'am," he said. "You were too impatient. When I said luckily, I meant I was fortunate to hide in the ventilation shaft without being spotted by William's security, not that I took any special photos." Laughter and derision followed. "Ha! New online media kids are so desperate for fame, they act without thinking. The grim-faced editor-in-chief at Valentine News is going to be in trouble. He sent such a brainless subordinate." "Maybe the editor-in-chief prefers young reporters who are pretty but not too bright," a middle-aged reporter joked, nudging his colleague. The Valentine reporter stood there, red-faced and humiliated, while William watched with a cool, private amusement. Chapter 331. Why isn't your future wife a beneficiary of the foundation? Wow, he must be having the time of his life. I wonder if he'll still be smiling after tomorrow's press conference. Those online outlets are going to feast on this. I love seeing rule breakers get their comeuppance. I'm more curious whether William Devlin Hill, who just tangled with Brandel, will turn his attention to Valentine Company. Richmond Valentine isn't just obscenely rich. They employ over 1 million people worldwide. If those two go at each other, it'll be a spectacle. The female reporter who'd made the earlier scene couldn't stand the ridicule anymore. She covered her face and bolted from the room. Laughter erupted the moment she left. A few people jeered at Dario. "Dario, you're in trouble now. Valentine's people will be watching you." Dario shrugged, unaffected, then, with a mischievous grin, turned to William and asked, "So, Mr. Devlin Hill, am I eligible for relief from your foundation?" "Boo, boo, boo! Dario, you're shameless," someone called. "Thank you," Dario said, taking the jeers in stride and nodding to those around him. William only shook his head and laughed. Dario, despite being a decent man, father, and husband, had grown so used to the tabloids that he had no sense of dignity in front of the cameras. Under any other circumstances, William might have been put off, but tonight he was amused. "You're a good father, Mr. Dario," William said. "Raising 3 children alone is remarkable, and supporting your wife's father on top of that is even more so. Congratulations, you're eligible, and because you're kind to the elderly, our foundation will cover half your father-in-law's pension. I won't cover it in full, only because I'm worried you'd find the best nursing home in the entire country, and that wouldn't be fair to others." "Ha ha ha. Exactly, William. If you covered it all, that scoundrel Dario would definitely find the best nursing home," someone joked, and the room laughed. Dario let out a mock, pitiful shrug. "Now I know why you're so rich. At least you're hard to fool, Mr. Devlin Hill." William kept the banter going. For the sake of your 3 lovely children, I'll sponsor a one-day family trip to a yacht club. You can even use my new yacht. But you'll have to sign a waiver beforehand. I provide the conditions. You're responsible for your own safety. If anything happens, it's not on me. More laughter and catcalls filled the hall. Given Dario's reputation, people half expected him to try to milk the offer. Tastes aside, William tapped the microphone, letting the room settle. Let's get back to why we're here. Of course, Mr. Devlin Hill, came the polite responses. The Foundation's application criteria, quotas, and disbursements are practical matters. My principle is simple. Relief goes to those with no income who are not using their children to seek money. I don't think anyone will object to that. No, that's fair, most agreed, and Dario let out an audible sigh of relief. Those nearest him exchanged quiet congratulations. Not everyone felt sympathy. Some looked at him with pity. But Dario, an old hand at tabloids, stood proud and asked, "May I know the amount of funding the Foundation will provide?" "Of course," William said. "The Devlin Hill Family Foundation's legal representative is me. The controlling party is my mother. The primary beneficiaries are my mother, my future children, and myself. The initial endowment will be no less than $1 billion in cash, plus shares totaling about $1 billion, specifically 3% of Disney, 4% of Apple, and 7% of Amazon. That brings the Foundation's starting capital to roughly $2 billion. Under private foundation rules, we'll donate at least 5% annually, which means future annual funding will be no less than $100 million. A low chorus of disbelief swept the room. $100 million? Seriously? Just give it to me, a young reporter blurted, earning scornful looks from colleagues. 100 million could, in theory, help around 20,000 families, William continued. That sounds like a lot, but judged by Mr. Dario's standards, those slots wouldn't go far in New York City. So to clarify, while we won't refuse male single-parent families, our primary focus will be female single-parent households. And there's the bigger question, should we help single parents in Europe and North America, or focus on lower-income families in Asia, Africa, and Latin America? The room fell silent. Many privately hoped aid would stay local, but no one dared say so aloud. After a pause, with no answer forthcoming, William shrugged. If that's too difficult to decide right now, we'll open it to public input, or distribute aid equally. He saved the last announcement for his mother. Next month, on the 23rd, is my mother's birthday. I've hired New York's restaurant number 11 to handle the dinner, and her gift will be Chelsea Football Club. The reporters, already numbed by the scale of the foundation, could only give polite applause. A football club, worth under $200 million by comparison, no longer stirred them. There was simply too much news. A stock market showdown with Brand L, massive share acquisitions, an ostentatious foundation. Stories would explode across tomorrow's headlines. To avoid accusations and to keep my Mother's Day peaceful, I'll donate to the England Women and Children Protection Foundation the same amount as the banquet's expenses, a cashier's check in full. Also, to thank Chelsea's supporters who've helped my mother, they'll get invitations to the banquet and lifetime tickets to home games while Chelsea belongs to the Devlin Hill family. I'll reserve all Chelsea fan pubs. For 3 days before and after the 23rd, anyone wearing a Chelsea jersey can drink beer for free. Those wearing scarves can too. This is both a thank you to fans and a way to celebrate that my mother, Lena Devlin Hill, will be the first female Premier League chairman and likely the wealthiest woman in England and perhaps the world in the years to come. No one argued the point. Reporters took in the claims, knowing tomorrow's papers would be merciless. A hand shot up. Why isn't your future wife included as a primary beneficiary of the Devlin Hill Family Foundation? A female reporter asked. The room turned. Reporters remembered that William had named his mother and his future children as beneficiaries, but never his future wife. Some leaned toward thoughts of contract marriages and contract births. Ambrosio, standing nearby, suddenly found the gaze of the press shift from envy and hatred to pity and schadenfreude. Female reporters, in particular, sneered internally, a reminder that a rich partner doesn't guarantee a secure rise. All right, that's it for today's press conference, William said as he began to rise. One final reminder, I've assembled a 21-person legal team, including 5 senior lawyers, and set aside over $10 million for legal fees. If that's not enough, I won't hesitate to raise it to $100 million. So please, be cautious with your words and your reports. Chapter 332. A family with 2 of the richest individuals. Wait, you didn't answer the question. You can't just leave like that, someone shouted. Mr. Devlin Hill, are you anti-marriage? Called another. The room erupted into a melee. Front row reporters pushed past security, waving recorders and demanding interviews. William ignored them. Answering was his choice. Hold on. If you have children outside marriage, aren't they illegitimate? The Devlin Hill family has existed for over 1,000 years. Are you talking about a second illegitimate child? A stunned reporter from News of the World blurted. Silence fell like a curtain. People recoiled from the speaker. William, who had been shaking hands with Brandell's chairman, let go and turned, fixing the man by his badge. News of the World? He said. Noted. He handed the microphone back, then addressed the Brandell chairman in a tone that made the older man's heart race. You should thank me. Tomorrow your stock will rise. Maybe you should consider letting me buy more shares. My involvement will only help your company. I'm not interested in management rights. Think it over and call me if you want to discuss it. Then William took Ambrosio's hand. Amid the shouting reporters, a dozen bodyguards escorted the 2 of them out. They climbed into a stretched Cadillac sedan, the model the U.S. president uses, and were driven back to William's New York home in a convoy of 8 SUVs. Less than an hour later, William's remarks at the Brandell signing were already appearing in the noon news. Maybe it was William's earlier warning to prepare a legal team and a reserve of $10 or even $100 million for lawsuits that worked. That day, the television and print coverage of him was, by and large, accurate. No one needed to twist the facts. The raw footage from the scene was enough to shock anyone who saw it. Pundits invited onto the nightly shows had grown noticeably more cautious, debating instead why William had suddenly set up a family foundation, why the beneficiaries named were Lena, himself, and their children, without any mention of a future wife or the children's mother, and why he chose this moment to disclose his net worth. At the press conference, William reported that he had earned $1.1 billion in 2 days. Even taking the figure at the low end, $1.1 billion in 2 days, William Devonshire's personal wealth already exceeded $13 billion. That was the conservative estimate. Most commentators suspected his net worth had climbed past $20 billion, which would have put him among the top 10 richest people in the world. Even at the $13 billion estimate, he would rank 21st globally. The country buzzed with one question. Was Lena Devonshire now the richest woman in England? Based on the companies William had disclosed, despite underperforming shares in Apple and Amazon, their combined worth was about $400 million. Chelsea and Disney holdings came to nearly $1 billion, and with $1 billion in cash pledged to the Devonshire Family Foundation, the foundation's assets already exceeded $2 billion. Researchers compared that to the wealthiest family foundations in England. The Duke of Westminster's foundation held roughly $7 billion as of May, while the Queen Philip, as the papers named her, had assets around £1.2 billion, roughly $1.5 billion. By those calculations, Lena Devonshire had indeed become the wealthiest woman in England. Someone even leaked that Lena held over £300 million in cash deposits at the Bank of England. Add the foundation's $1 billion in cash, and Lena's liquid holdings would be nearly $1.5 billion. The leaker was the subject of intense online speculation until the London police, acting on a tip, arrested him less than a day later. He turned out to be a traitor who'd been dismissed from the Bank of England for misconduct. Public envy was high, but there was little anger directed at Lena. She hadn't married into wealth. She simply had a son, William Devonshire, who happened to be the most powerful man in England. The tabloids the next day ran the same headline across the country, "Two richest people," and the stories celebrated a mother and son topping the national wealth lists simultaneously. The Guardian's conservative tally verified $11 billion of William's holdings. At the end of the report, the paper speculated his true total. After subtracting the $2 billion set aside for the family foundation, could be as much as $15 billion. Their tipster claimed William had invented a near-invisible bulletproof suit that sold for £5 million apiece, and that he planned to launch a specialist company to manufacture such protective apparel. Before the company even existed, it had been tentatively valued at $4 billion. Dozens, perhaps hundreds of prototypes had already been sold privately, promising turnover between £100 million and £500 million before official launch. Using a standard PE multiple, the valuation seemed plausible. The Guardian contrasted Williams' product, thin, dust, and waterproof, with level 4 protection, with competitors whose fabrics were twice as thick, afforded only level 3 protection, and cost even more, sometimes reaching £8 million a suit. The story reverberated through markets. The next day, sales of special bulletproof casual wear worldwide slowed, and the share prices of some listed companies slipped. William, sitting in New York, grimaced. He could imagine the trouble and harassment waiting for him once he returned to England. But staying away wasn't an option either. He'd already received no fewer than 20 calls and hundreds of invitations while in his Manhattan apartment. Chapter 333, A National Treasure Among National Treasures. God! Ambrosio's exclamations snapped William out of the news. She sprang up from the sofa and, clutching an envelope, practically danced over to him. She looped an arm through his and squealed, "Darling, an invitation to the White Palace reopening reception. It was personally written by President Benjamin Arthur, and he invited me. Can I go? Can I, please?" "No," William said without hesitation. The recent attack had left the White Palace a ruin. Over 200 people had died in the occupation. He couldn't imagine going to a place like that. Besides, he wasn't interested in politics. The White Palace would be nothing but a chore. Charity foundations looking for donations, conglomerates angling for a stake in his new company. He wasn't going to hand over an opening to any of those leeches. Ambrosio slumped against his chest in mock disappointment, then changed tactics. In a soft, ingratiating voice, she asked, "Darling, could I get a set of those new suits for my parents?" William eyed his girlfriend with that careful look he always reserved for important questions. "Security in parts of Brazil isn't the best, and now the whole world knows I'm your boyfriend. I worry about your parents." "Why not?" she said, her voice only a whisper. "Could you send them some, so they'll be safe?" "Of course," William smiled. "I'll send 4 sets to your parents in Brazil, 1 for each of them. Tell Sunday their sizes and preferences. I'll also have 2 made for you." Ambrosio threw herself at him in a grateful hug and showered his lips with kisses. 6 sets? Isn't that extravagant?" "The bulletproof fabric is mine. The production cost isn't really high. The price reflects R&D. You can't sell something this advanced for nothing. And because other companies charge ridiculous markups. My product is better. I'm not going to undersell it. In a few years, the price will fall as the tech spreads. I just regret not getting into this market sooner. I'm losing a lot of money by being that far ahead." "Stop," Ambrosio patted his chest. "I don't want to hear anything more about money. I've heard enough from the news these past few days. No matter how much there is, it's not mine. Woe is me, your official girlfriend, with my paltry $500,000 a month of pocket money." William smacked her backside lightly. "You scoundrel." "Ow," she protested, rubbing the spot. William rolled his eyes. "So tell me, what jewelry, car, or house have you got your heart set on?" She kissed him again, cooing. "I want to buy my parents a house in a secure community near Ipanema so I don't have to worry about them. I don't think I have enough." "How short?" William asked. Filial piety was a decent reason to spend money. He wouldn't refuse. "I have $1.7 million total, my savings and the allowance you gave me, but I need to hold back $100,000 for this month. I'm about $400,000 short." "That's nothing." William grinned. "I'll have someone find the house. Your job is to look at properties, keep enough money aside to pay for a good security company. I don't want any news about your parents getting into trouble because you're my girlfriend." "That's perfect." Ambrosio kissed him and shot to fetch her phone, calling her parents immediately. She had apparently forgotten, or chosen to forget, the White Palace invitation once William had refused to go. As a model without a huge name, she might never get another chance to attend a White Palace reception, but she clearly preferred a quiet life, protected from trouble, over ceremonial honors. After she had Sunday call to decline the White Palace invitation and had Felix, his private client manager at the Swiss National Bank, start searching for homes in Rio, William decided it was time to go back to the castle. He'd been idle in New York for 2 days and had grown tired of invitations and parties. Back at the castle, he could oversee arrangements for his mother's birthday banquet at Restaurant 11 and prepare for Red Hare's St. Leger, an official 2,930-meter championship on the 21st. This would be his horse's first official race. If he wasn't there and Red Hare won, he'd be ridiculed. Abigail had called him no fewer than 5 times in 2 days, pressing him to return to London about the antiques. She and 5 appraisal experts from China had done a preliminary review of the first batch, over 1,000 pieces, and found the collection astonishing. Even the least valuable pieces were worth tens of thousands of pounds at current market prices. In 2000 terms, anything worth over 100,000 RMB back then was definitely worth preserving. The real issue was the volume. 6 experts couldn't appraise everything quickly. In 3 days, they'd only managed to examine about 300 items, and already several national treasures had appeared. What alarmed the 5 Chinese experts most was material a baron named Daniel Cabor had handed Abigail the day before. He'd slipped her a document bag with a dozen photocopies and a request to meet William. Abigail had shown the copies to the Chinese experts, and they had all gone pale, agitated, and incoherent. The pages looked like they could be consecutive volumes of the Yongle Encyclopedia, an absolute national treasure among national treasures. Compared to the Yongle Encyclopedia, porcelain and ancient paintings, however valuable, were of a different order of significance. That was why Abigail kept urging William to come back. He'd extended his stay in New York only because his paranoia had flared up. He'd ordered Sunday to do a full background check on the suddenly appearing Baron Daniel Cabor, and Sunday had quietly hired an English noble archivist who took private work to dig up whatever records existed. William would not meet this Cabor until he knew who the man was. Only a handful of people knew about his dealings in Chinese antiques with the Duke of Devon and others. Lost in thought, William heard Sunday's voice. "Sir, Miss Abigail is on the line." "Ugh! Didn't I tell them I had other things to do?" he groaned. He dropped back into the sofa. "Put her through." "Hello, good evening, boss. I hope I'm not disturbing your private time with Miss Ambrosio."